Happy Friday. We did it. We made it through yet another week. I think for the first time in probably 3 or 4 weeks, all of my different streaming things are working at the same time. It's like the Hallelujah chorus has sung down from the sky. It's like, I'm going to make all the technology gods align just for you so that we can have an amazing happy hour. Well, guys, if you've made it over to happy hour, get ready. These are long form streams where we convene together at 5 o'clock on Fridays and we watch a full woke training. We don't show you the clips, we don't show you the highlights. We watch it from start to finish. And the purpose of happy hour is that we really want to understand precisely and exactly what they are saying so that we can best fight the enemy. Listen, you cannot fight back against the enemy if you are just taking clips from Fox News or taking headlines or tweets or things like that. And the reason is this. And we see this happening all the time. As soon as someone comes up and says, well, what does critical race theory even mean? And puts a microphone in your face and you go, Fox News told me it was anti-white. And then that's the clip that they run with forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. What we do in happy hour is we really want to understand what they're saying, what the words mean, how they're playing language tricks, because that puts us in a much better position to not only explain it to other people, but also to fight back against it and hopefully eventually defeat it. And we are going right back to our Vermont series today because like Vermont is just the treasure trove, man. It's just the way it is. I don't know why that's little. Let me make this bigger. There we go. That's much nicer, isn't it? Today we're going to be watching a training from the University of Vermont. The University of Vermont actually has an official diversity and equity and inclusion channel. We've watched some of their trainings before, but it's been a while. It's been like probably a year since we watched one of theirs. Because I like to shift things around and keep it interesting. But because we're focusing on Vermont and the Unwoke Army, it makes sense that we might do a little bit more Vermont-centric stuff for a little bit. Because like killing two birds with one stone. The Unwoke Army's here hanging out anyway. We might as well get some research in the process. That was actually why I started Happy Hour in the first place. I was like, I'm going to be watching these things anyway. I might as well do it with friends and make fun of it. So today we're going to be watching a training called You Can't Be Anti-Racist If You Don't Understand Race. And apparently this is session 1, part 2, but I didn't really understand why it's part 2. Perhaps we'll find out. But you're going to see here in support and collaboration with earlier sessions, Amazing Grace Finding Other, blah, 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 blah. They're offering a 2-part program to increase our awareness and understanding of race and how to seek justice through actions. And you can see here that one of the presenters for this webinar is a chair in, oh, not a chair, just a regular PhD, but we've got someone from the political science department. So this isn't even like some woke social justice department. This is actually a professor from the political science department at the University of Vermont. So we're going to see what he has to say. And then as dessert, do you guys remember how we watched half of the White House summit on convening on equity? And in that half of the White House summit convening on equity, we found a golden nugget. We found a clip that of the Biden administration admitting that the vaccine is killing people of color at a higher rate. And we put that shit all over Twitter and it got tens of thousands of views, which was pretty rad. But we only watched half of the White House's convening on equity summit. And it kind of seemed like they were starting getting into some racial justice stuff. But to be honest, we were like 3 hours into the stream at that point, and I was like, that's enough. I can take no more. So after we watched the UVM one, I kind of want to stick around and watch the back half of this White House convening on equity thing, because even though it's a political game and even though there's lots of boring stuff in it, this just happened. This convening on equity thing just happened like last week. And so it probably is important that we understand what the Biden administration is actually saying and doing. So I've kind of got that slotted in for the back half. It's like a double header, basically. So that's what we're going to be watching today. Yeah. Like Patrice probably is being the voice of reason in the chat where she's saying, and I know it's going to pop up, the White House stuff is a bigger deal. Yeah, Patrice, probably. It probably is. We probably should watch it. You know what's amazing to me is, so when we watched this last week, only 2,600 people had even watched this video last week. Now there are over 10,000. There are 2 million subs on the White House YouTube channel. Only 10,000 people in the entire world have watched this convening on Equity Summit. And last week when we watched it, there was a quarter of that. There was like 2,600 people who had watched it. So you are one of the few, the proud. But we're going to do UVM first because I think UVM might actually be more juicy. And, we'll have a couple of drinks watching UVM. And then once we get to the White House, even if it's like super boring, at least we'll be drunk because we'll probably need to be. That is the benefit of happy hour. We whistle while we work, as it were. Well, before we dig into those, I got a few orders of business. Now, of course, we play Unwoke Bingo during happy hour, so you can download your bingo card in the description below. I've been forgetting to announce this the past couple of weeks, but what you do is just go ahead, generate your card. Every card is unique just to you. You get a free space in the middle, and then we're going for lines or we're going for corners. Now, there are a couple rules with this. Number one, I have liberty to make up rules at any time. So if Chris Rufo is ever mentioned in one of these trainings, everyone gets a free square. If you stay till the end of the 7-hour marathon stream I did last Saturday, congratulations, you get a free square. If you hit a bingo by getting lines or corners, shout out bingo in the chat. You don't win anything. But we'll all congratulate you and we'll all celebrate. And once someone gets bingo, then we're going to do blackout bingo after that. We have yet to get a blackout bingo, but I don't know, man. Maybe if I'm feeling saucy enough, I will be giving out free squares. Like who knows what's going on. Alex made it to 6.5. That's enough, Alex. That's enough. You can get a free square. I know you were working, so it's a little bit of a different thing. Naruto says, "Rip CNN Plus. You barely got a chance to spread the lies." Karlyn, did you see Glenn Beck's Twitter thread on this? I did. I did see Glenn Beck's Twitter thread dragging CNN Plus was fire. Glenn Beck also just did a video on grooming in schools that it, like I'm told is very good. I actually want to watch it. I think we're gonna watch it next week on one of the streams. We're gonna watch it together. So I don't want to steal the thunder of that video just yet. But Glenn Beck is fire, man. Glenn Beck is like the best. He really is. He does a great job. All right, so make sure you get your Unwoke bingo card, and we can do that. And then, of course. Let's see. Oh, the book. Okay, that's what's next. If you would like to support the work I'm doing, there's a couple ways that you can do that. One of those ways is by pre-ordering my book that's coming out next month. It's called Actively Unwoke, the ultimate guide for fighting back against woke insanity in your life. You can pre-order it on Amazon. You can pre-order it on non-Amazon. So if you're one of those people that you just don't like Amazon, I totally understand it. If you head over to activelyunwoke.com, you will have options for both. The book comes out on May 10th. Now, this is an important date because, oh, why is this doing this? Hang on. Stand by. Huh, that's weird. I think my computer had I was accidentally pressing a key on my laptop or something. So it's important to know that May 10th is the date it comes out because if you would like access to my special 3-part Actively Unwoke book club, you got to pre-order the book. This is exclusive just for people who pre-order the book. Okay, so you have to order it by May 9th. You can order it in hardcover, audio, or Kindle. I don't really care what you get. But if you want to forward your receipt to bookclub@activelyunwoke.com, I'm going to invite you to 3 exclusive Zoom calls with me to discuss the different sections of the book and to talk about creating your own plan for how you are going to fight back against woke insanity in your life. More information about that is available on activelyunwoke.com under Unwoke Events. And if you become an annual member of my locals community, you will also be able to request a free customized autograph book plate for your book from me. This is exclusive to my local supporters because, of course, my local supporters are my very best supporters. They're what make it possible for me to gallivant around with you guys on a Friday afternoon, or to piss off the National Speakers Association as I did earlier today. We'll be talking about that on Sunday, or to do any of the things I do to help you understand the woke ideology, explain it to people, fight back against it, work with parent groups, all that good stuff, having our online community. We have all sorts of stuff going on in locals. Like, there's actually so much stuff going on in my locals that if I listed every single thing going on in my locals right now, we would be here for like another 15 minutes before we even got into the presentation. So the very best thing you can do if you want to check out my locals and you're not ready to sign up as a member yet, dude, I totally get it. You can head over directly to kb.locals.com and join for free. You don't have to pay just to get in and see what's going on. You can join for free. And then if you decide, man, this is awesome and I want access to all these exclusive perks and I want to be able to interact with the amazing people in this community, what you're going to want to do is to head over to kb.locals.com/support and you can sign up for $5 a month. You can also sign up for $50 a year, which gives you 2 months for free and also gets you a free customized autographed book plate for Actively Unwoke. You can also make a one-time gift, which is, of course, greatly appreciated and goes to the support the work I do. Yes, we are a cult. I have embraced my role as the Unwoke cult leader. You gotta embrace it. At some point, you just gotta say, you know what? They were right. I am running a cult. It's fine. You know, who's to say what's a cult and what's not a cult nowadays? Yeah, it's super super dangerous and it's super secret and we have rituals and we perform black magic on our enemies. It's a fun place to be. My community is the best. All right, guys, last thing I want to let you know is I will be streaming a special Sassy Saturday stream on my main channel tomorrow. Now, I stream on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 5 p.m. on my main channel. Fridays, we come over here. Saturdays are usually my day off. But what I've learned over the last couple weeks is that you guys really like drama streams on Saturdays. So, who am I to deny you what you so desperately crave? So we're gonna start doing Sassy Saturday streams. Now, I can't promise I'm gonna do it every Saturday, but I will try to do my very best. Sassy Saturday is basically it's gonna be a little bit more of an uppity stream. It's gonna be more of a drama stream. But this time, what we're gonna be doing is we are gonna be watching together the interview that Benjamin Boyce did with Jack Murphy. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard all about it. That's going to be starting at probably around about 6 p.m. on Saturday. There is an off chance, just to let everyone know, there is an off chance that I might start it a little bit later just because there's a Libertarian Party of New Hampshire meetup at an arcade that's like about an hour away. And I'm hopeful that I'll be back in time. But I'm honest. I'm like 90% positive I'm going to be back in time. But just to give you guys a heads up, I might be just a slightly bit late. And if I am, I will update you with what's going on there in locals and on social media. But it is my mission to be back by 6 o'clock on Saturday so that we can have Sassy Saturday. I don't want to deny you that. Naruto says, I'm surprised the left is against repealing the Disney privileges. They'll be subject to their own precious government regulations for the first time in a while. Well, they're going to be, the left is going to be against this is not even about principle though, because like the left is going to be against everything the right does and vice versa. It has nothing to do with what really matters in reality. It's just about sides. Oh, hey kid, what are you drinking? Well, that is a great question, Phil. That brings me to our last order of business for the day, and thank you for the super chat. Of course, because this is happy hour, I do have some beer on hand because I really like craft beer. It's my favorite thing in the world. Well, not my favorite thing in the world, but like it's pretty good. I've got 4 different options. I will not be drinking them all on the stream today. Now, we've got again, man. There it goes. I had to get it again. I got the last 4-pack of this berry cheesecake beer. It's so good. It's so good. And like with limited edition beer, like small batch beer, you never know if you're ever going to have it again. So I just bought the last 4-pack of that. I've got one of those up here. I'm actually really interested to try this one first. This is a cherry lime marshmallow seltzer. Now, this company makes beer, and I've had some of their beers before, and they're really thick and they're really desserty, and some of them are just a little bit much. But I wanted to try this because this is a seltzer. It is a sour pastry seltzer. This is from, what is the name of this brewing company? I can't even pronounce it. I can't even pronounce it. It's got like O's and Z's and shit. Like brewing companies have got to make their names pronounceable. I spill my glass of water. Hang on. I just dropped my Locals cup on the floor. It had water in it. Whatever. Probably responsible to have water on hand. And then I got, this is a pink lemonade from Pipe Dream Brewing. Just because I love pink lemonade, so why not try pink lemonade beer? And then this one is called Salinity Now Raspberry, and it is a fruited goose style ale. It is kettle soured goose ale brewed in the Isle of something or other, somewhere in New Hampshire, with sea salt, toasted coriander, and aged on a generous dose of raspberries. So the beer store near me, for some reason, they have like a metric F ton of sours, and I've never had so many sour beers in my life as I have since I've been getting beer from the beer store. So those are our selections. Now I kind of want to start with the seltzer, if I'm honest. Does anyone mind if I start with this cherry lime marshmallow seltzer? Because it's a seltzer, so I kind of feel like it'll be a little bit lighter, and then maybe we can go into the raspberry or one of the other ones. Oh God, Patrice wants me to do a poll. Okay, hang on, I'll do a poll. Hang on, poll please. Which beer should I start with? Now, I don't want to start with the cheesecake one, so we're not going to do that, but we can do seltzer. Hang on, cherry lime, seltzer. We can do raspberry, or we can do pink lemonade. I know how to spell lemonade today. All right, poll in the chat on YouTube. I will start with whichever one of those three options that you guys want. Yeah, Patrice is like taking over from the chat. She's like, "We're doing a poll, god damn it. Mount the like button if you have not mounted already." Alex says, "All alcohol is evil." F you, Alex. Whatever. All right, I promise to abide by the results of the poll. Just not the cheesecake one, because this is like, we're saving this. It's so fucking good. It's so good. Even Victor was like, "God damn, that beer's good." So we're saving that one. Let me see. Ooh, 42% for the seltzer so far. 38% for the raspberry, pink lemon. So it's basically down to seltzer or raspberry. Time to get your votes in. About half of you haven't voted yet. Oh God, now we're tied. Oh no! Patrice is campaigning. Oh no, the raspberry's taking the lead. That's fine. It's fine. Fine if you guys are going to make me drink something that I wanted a different option. Fine. All right, we'll drink the raspberry first. I actually think the raspberry is going to be good. So, like a goose ale is like is pretty light as well. Oh, cherry lime seltzer making a comeback. Oh, hang on. I was going to end the poll. No, cherry lime seltzer is making a comeback. I'm going to end the poll in 10 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. End poll. Cherry lime seltzer wins. Ha ha. Ha ha, Patrice. I beat you this time. To be fair, I was campaigning on video. But Patrice, I promise you I will drink the raspberry second, okay? So we got raspberry on deck, seltzer first. It's going to be better this way. You want a progression. You want a nice progression of beer. All right. Let's see. Oh, it's pink. Of course it's pink. Oh, look at how pretty it is. Oh, it looks thick too. Doesn't that look like not a seltzer? That looks like a smoothie or something. Uh-oh, shit. It's really heavy. That almost just spilled all over me. Save. Oh my God. Now I have foam all over my face. It's really good. Actually, it's really fucking good. This is not a seltzer, though. I don't know why they're calling this a seltzer. This is not a seltzer at all. All right, we're going to let that settle. It definitely has a lot of lime in it. It's definitely a nice contrast. All right. Who's ready to get started with happy hour? We're going to do it. Share screen. Chrome tab, audio. All right, guys, let's dig in and learn from the University of Vermont about race and how we can all be more anti-racist.
Good afternoon.
And let me know if the sound's okay.
My name is Sherwood Smith. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the director for the Center for Cultural Pluralism.
Everyone gets an extra square for pronouns.
And I want to welcome you to part 2 of What is Race? Sponsored by the Center for Cultural Pluralism and the Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at the University of Vermont. And I have the pleasure of being here today with Dr. Alec Ewald. I want to thank you all, and the intention of this is to have a discussion, so we're going to be looking for questions from the audience. That's going to be a real critical part of this. I want to start out again with a land acknowledgement.
Land blessing.
Recognize that
land
the
blessing.
This is taking place on serves as the site for meetings and exchange among Indigenous people for thousands of years, and that it specifically was the home of the Western Abenaki, that the University of Vermont wants to honor, recognize, and respect these people, especially the Abenaki, as the traditional stewards of the land and water on which we are having this event. And in that spirit, we want to acknowledge ourselves as guests on that land and to respect and honor the land and the Indigenous people. So
yes, we are all being very respectful today.
So to lay out the format,
does everyone feel more virtuous?
We are going to start out with sort of a question for each other. And then we ask that you put your questions into the chat. And those will be put up, and I will read the questions to make sure everybody gets a chance to hear them as well as see them. And we will do our best to answer them, or we'll honestly tell you if we can't. But this is really an opportunity for conversation. That said, I'm going to start if that's okay. I would ask Alec, would you just sort of briefly name and pronoun for everyone?
Name and pronoun.
Yeah, Alec Ewald, he, him. I'm in the political science department here at UVM, and thanks for having me part of this. I was wanting to mention there's a group of people that have made this possible. It's not just
you get a free bingo square for last Saturday, and Sin, you get an honorary bingo square because you had to leave for medical purposes.
Thanks to a whole group of people that have
so Sin gets a square.
And thanks most of all to
everyone who's was sassy Saturday got a square.
We'll try our best.
Only if you made it to the end.
To explain how little we know, and hopefully in a way that's helpful.
Thank you, Alec. This will be taped and
Alec's audio
will be posted on YouTube. So if you don't get a chance, you can follow up. And the original video is up on YouTube as well, on the DEI YouTube channel. So our last conversation, we really talked about the social construction of race in our short time. Alec,
hang on.
When you refer to white and use that as an identifier.
Hang on. Okay, I want to ask, do we want to go back and find the first part of this? Because I think I know where it is. I feel like we should watch the first part. I feel like I picked out the wrong one. Hang on, this is part 2. That's not it. See, this is why I got confused. Because it's not clear. It's not clear. It might be the only one that we have, to be honest. Is this it? What is? Oh, this must be it. This is it. This is it. Okay. Oh, this is only 35 minutes. Okay, this is good. We'll watch this. Okay. There we go. That's why I couldn't find it, because it wasn't. Okay, now we're starting at the start, which is a very good place to start.
Good afternoon.
No, you can keep your land blessing.
My name is Sherwood Smith, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the first in a series by the Center for Cultural Pluralism.
There we go.
Where we want to explore the concept of race. These sessions have come out of my own personal
apologies for that, guys. I thought we were watching the first one.
But also out of a variety of wonderful conversations that was started by the Vice President for Diversity, Engagement, and Inclusion. One called Amazing Grace, the other called Beyond Brave Spaces. I have today the pleasure of company of a good friend, Alec Ewald, and we are going to be having a lively conversation.
Yes,
for
Spirit
around
Matter. I
30
can turn on the
minutes
captions.
that you get to listen to, which will be followed on October 30th with an opportunity to engage us with questions about the presentation. First, let me
We
share
don't want to
with
be
you
ableist.
that I want to focus on addressing an important issue. That UVM is
You're
located
welcome.
on land which traditionally belonged to the Abenaki people,
Land blessing.
and that it was on this site that they exchanged with other indigenous people in the region for thousands of years. That the Abenaki are the traditional stewards of this land, and that we want to acknowledge that we are gathered today in their space, and in that spirit to acknowledge that we are guests on the land, and that UVM
You're not guests on the
and
land. UVM can't be kicked
Vermont
off
want
the
to
land.
continue to affirm indigenous peoples' sovereignty, history, and experiences.
I wonder, they say they're guests on the land, but if the Abenaki wanted to kick UVM off of the land and disinvite them from being guests, would UVM just leave? I don't think that they would, which means that they are now the owners of the land. I'm sorry if that hurts anyone's fragile sensibilities, but if you can't be kicked off, then you're not a guest.
And to advocate for them in the gaining of their due rights in the society. That said, a little more background on me, and then Alex will do an introduction as well. As I said, my name is Sherwood Smith. I use he, him pronouns. I am director for the Center for Cultural Pluralism and also teach at the university. I'm originally from Jersey, but I've been in Vermont since 1995.
Oh,
and that's enough on me. Alec, would you be kind enough to give a little bit of...
Certainly, Sherwood. Thank you. I just wanted to say, by way of introduction or preface, that when Sherwood Smith and I talked about this a few weeks ago for the first time, I was really nervous, concerned about doing it for a few reasons. One is the question, what is race?
Professor of political science.
And that it's so complicated.
It's not complicated at all, actually.
Because this is a question on which who you are and how you come across to others very much bears on the content itself and really creates the content in a lot of ways. And I'm really concerned about,
Sean, I love you more than I already did.
Video about coming across as a white presenting person, telling everybody what race is. Of course, white people do have race and do experience race. It's an error to say that they don't. But I'm just very aware of that these days in particular. And then the last reason, the thing that I want to note that makes it tricky to do this, and our title speaks to anti-racism and the desire to do that kind of work. And these days, a lot of people are hungry for knowledge about these kinds of issues, specifically for advocacy reasons. And if you want information that you can use for advocacy, which is terrific, you've got a specific orientation going in. And sometimes academics have an orientation.
He literally just admitted they're doing this to train activists. I just want to note that University of Vermont technically is a public university. It's a taxpayer-funded university. This is a professor of political science at the university, and he just admitted they're training activists.
To say, well, this is complicated, or, well, here's some...
It's worth noting that the university is also a land grant university, which technically means they aren't supposed to be doing this. That's actually real. Like, the land was granted to them by the country. They are not supposed to be doing this shit.
Important context.
It's part of the Morrill Act in the 1800s.
Like, well, whatever, I need stuff that I can use. And that also makes it tricky for me to sort of say, let's think about what race is while people were looking for sort of advocacy content. So I hope that's not too much. And academics can also over-preface things and get in the way of important material. But I just want to register those things as we sort of get this started. And most of all, my gratitude for the chance to be here and have such a critical and hopefully also forgiving interlocutor in Sherwood Smith.
Thank you, Alec. Well said. And I want to second Alec's point. This could be a semester-long, 16 hours a day 24 hours a week class, and we still wouldn't get through everything.
Well, we have some of those, and you should take them.
The intention here is
They have some of
to use
those
a food
taxpayer-funded
metaphor.
classes.
This is a tasting
Oh,
session,
good.
and we're going to let you taste a few of our favorite dishes. There are a lot of other dishes. Other people have favorites. This is not the end-all, be-all, but I think it's important, as the title is, that if you don't understand race, how can we be anti-racist? And all of us, regardless of our race, can learn more about the history and the meanings that have been implied by the concept of race. That said, I want to start with the concept just a bit. I'm going to share 2 slides with you.
So just to prepare everyone, what they're going to talk about is race. Here's my guess of what they're going to talk about. Race was invented when the first slaves came to the United States, because until then, white people weren't called white. They were called English or Irish or, or not Italian, but like German or any of those things. And they referred to by their country that they came from rather than as being white. And then when they came to America, the white people invented the concept of the white race in order to distinguish themselves from black people, and white people proceeded to only build institutions and put policies and systems in place that benefited other white people to the detriment of black people, and that is the thing that started systemic racism and why it exists today. I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm just saying that that is probably an overview of what they are going to talk about, but I could be wrong.
The first slide really is something I've taken. There's a model called the Iceberg model of race. And this is race identity as a tree. And I want to point out as we continue this conversation that race has multiple aspects. It has a cultural, visible aspect, the branches. Race has often been marked by skin color, hair texture, accent, tone of voice, music, even sports. It's also has an institutional, and this is where I feel like I'm not the expert scholar, but
hang on.
Do
you notice that in grouping things like skin color, hair texture, bone structure, eye shape, lip shape, they've grouped them with other things that are external to the person. So they've grouped physical characteristics with cultural characteristics: language, sports, food, music, clothing, and jewelry. What they're doing when they're grouping immutable characteristics, things we are born with that we cannot change, with cultural characteristics, our preferences, things like that, they're basically saying that race has no biological basis. That's why they're grouping the biological elements in with the cultural elements, because they're going to say that race has no biological basis.
Legal policies, government policies, segregation in schools, formal documents marking you belonging to a particular race have been a continuous part of our history, as well as these ideas that circulated from early on about intrinsic beliefs about what skin color meant about people's values, beliefs, and continues to be a conversation about abilities. So as we think about race, remember to think about race at multiple levels and in multiple ways. The other piece I want to ground us on is that from a Western European standpoint, there was a critical moment in which race became, super large quotes, science. And the two people
Brent,
that I want to reference are Linnaeus, Carlos Linnaeus, and Blumenbach. Linnaeus was the person who created what's called taxonomies of species, categorized everything and almost anything, including people. And his student Blumenbach continued in that tradition. And so there was a, quote, science of race, super large quotes, that people relied upon in terms of trying to categorize people. I'm going to stop there. I want to go back and have Alec start talking about his own piece on how race operates and exists.
Thank you, Sherwood. I should have mentioned what we're going to try to do is Sherwood challenged us to each have 4 points, in our limited time tasting menu, trying to generate some ideas and questions. Can you do this in 4 points? And so, and if we have time, we might ask a couple of questions. So the tree, Sherwood, and by the way, Sherwood's the master here and is going to sort of go back and forth with slides whenever he wants. Just to be clear about that, feel free to put things back up. but can the cultural was the leaves, right?
Yes. Let me try to. I'll try to go back here. Hold on, just a second.
Yeah, and I was just curious if you think the best understanding or way to use or apply that metaphor, which seems really valuable, is it can those change most readily while the underlying stuff might still be there? Does that make sense? I mean, as race changes, yeah, go ahead.
And also, the leaves are the most responsive to the environment. You know, the roots are protected, they're sheltered, the ground temperature doesn't change that much, but the leaves are buffeted and rained on and all that other stuff.
Well, that's very nice. People don't know this, but Sherwood Smith is actually a natural scientist by training, so that was not an accidental.
Oh, really?
Skillful. And then perhaps we'll come back.
Oh,
to this,
he's a scientist.
Putting science
okay.
in quotes quite loudly and twice, which I think is smart. But I would certainly argue that
Brett was right. Look at the spelling of. I said said jewelry, but that's not how they spelled it. They spelled it jewelry. Wow. Freudian slip in the slide. Well spotted, Brent. Well spotted. I thought you were just being a smartass when you were saying something serious.
Have a science of race now. There's a great deal of interest in DNA testing. Henry Louis Gates Jr. has been spending the last 10 years of his career studying ancestry with famous people on television. It might be better. It might be different. I'm not sure I like any of it, to be honest. But the idea that there was a racial science, I think
and they called me an anti-Semite.
My point zero. I'm going to cheat. I get 4, but I'm also going to have point
Jesus
0.
Christ.
There are different races in different countries. That's kind of a foundational point. In South Africa, there is a formal colored race. That is how people are identified. Government policies discuss a colored race as well as black and white races. Brazil has a number of different gradations. There's really good literature comparing those 3 countries as well as others. And that's a really indisputable central point that I think is one that one can sort of ponder all day long. So there are different races in different countries is my kind of point zero about what race is. It's a fact that speaks to many others. Okay, my point 1. There have not always been white people in the United States.
Told you.
The word white has been used since before the country existed, but it wasn't used nearly as much, and it definitely did not have the same meaning. There was a lot more reference to the English race or the Christian-speaking people, and then later to Anglo-Saxons, to Teutonic people, to Nordic people. Famously, Calvin Coolidge in 1921, criticizing immigration, referred to the Nordic race and contrasted it with others. And he actually described how the Nordic race propagated well, but that other races didn't blend well. He was referring to Mediterranean race and the Alpine race, to Celts, and of course the Italian race, language which has appeared in U.S. history really into the 1960s. It was very, very common to discuss the Italian race. So the word white existed and was used, but other parts of European people's identity was much more salient. And Sherwood has already sort of foreshadowed this, but their clothing, their language, their poverty, their food.
We embrace alcoholism on this channel. Boom her. We do.
People as different, and the word
we embrace it.
Explicitly used to refer to different
They've given us no other
from
choice.
Different parts of Europe. It has absolutely not been the case across U.S. history that European and white are the same person. A couple more quick things about this into the present. On the census today, whether you're Latino or Hispanic, that's the census's language, is separate from whether you're white. And in the most recent census, about half of people who said they were Latino also said that they were white. So the meaning of white is under a great deal of flux now. Finally, when you fill out the census today, the census asks you if you check white, which I did. I was then prompted to fill out enter origins, and it said, for example, German, Irish, English, Italian, Lebanese, or Egyptian. Lebanese or Egyptian are the U.S. Census's current suggestions for what white people might identify as their origins. So James Baldwin, quoted by Ta-Nehisi Coates, people who think they are white sort of refer to this idea of whiteness as created and constructed over time. There have not always been white people in the way there are now in the United States. So that's my first point.
No, that's not true. Hang on. We need to be very clear about that. There have always been white people in the United States. What he is talking about is the evolution of language. It's not that there haven't been white people in the United States, is that the language has evolved and has taken on different meaning. And this is actually really, I mean, this is kind of ironic, isn't it? Because this is one of the best examples of the ways in which the woke use language as their greatest weapon. They have literally weaponized a definition changing and evolving over time. That's what it is. But this is not to say there haven't always been white people in the United States. Of course, there have been white. I mean, not always, because like we weren't here at the beginning, obviously. But we sailed over on some giant ships. We were the same. We were the same type of people. It is the same lineage. The genes did not change. What changed was the language and how the language is used, and that is universal of everything. We don't use the same language today that we used in the 1600s. It evolved. That's the way the human species works.
So I think I'm just going to follow up on this interesting piece of two things you've said. One, I definitely think there is a science that attempts to and successfully look at people's origins. I'm not sure that the science tries to necessarily always connect those with a race. So they may say that your people came from England or they came from the Basque region. They're not necessarily being able to say that you're, to use the words we're talking about, white. I think one of the challenges around this conversation that we're both playing with is this piece around what's the definition we're going to use for race, right? And even the definition for white comes out of this really interesting piece where Box says it's people from the Caucasus Mountains and claims that they are the original and most beautiful people, not the Germans, not the English, Russians, right? And suggests that the Caucasus Mountains are the birthplace of the human race. So you've got some really odd stuff going on. I also want to play on your piece about the census. One of the things when we start to talk about race, we need to understand, as you put it, that races are constantly being constructed and deconstructed geographically, but specifically within the US. What counted as a race throughout our history is pitifully inconsistent. My favorite case here is if you look into the 1920s, you'll discover that in 1920 and in 1930, 1940, Hindu was a racial group, along with Filipino and Korean, right? So
yeah, you forgot to
yes, congratulations.
Your,
language evolves. Language evolves.
It is the most bizarre piece that I could find. So in that way, it is absolutely my favorite. You're right. It was
the use of what we consider an
obviously
religious term to refer to a geographic group, right? It was South Asian.
Okay, serious question. What was a quadroon or an octoroon? What was that? Is there anything else that's weird? No, not really.
Ian.
Who aren't all Hindus.
Of course.
This is what becomes, it ignores.
What did they know?
It ignores Sikhs, it ignores Muslims, it ignores Astro-Zoanders. I mean, it's so, yes, it's.
Quarter black or eighth black.
One of the challenges we're talking about is that, as this diagram shows, if you're going to look at these topics, you're going to run into the problem that it's going to get more and more complex. And I'm asking at least, that you lean into the complexity and actually challenge people to accept the complexity of it and push folks for an actual definition. So my second piece is, when people use race, I really would appreciate it if people would define what they mean. The term gets used without any clarity around exactly what people are referring to. And I go back to Alex's point, at different times and in different places in the world, people mean very different things.
Yes, because language evolves. Congratulations.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Sherwood. And and your clarification on the contemporary science of race generally does not set out, well, a lot of it sets out to show that races don't exist. That is, that they can't be clearly delineated. But different parts of it will also emphasize, and I think 23andMe's of the world, I think you're right, they do emphasize like geography, right? I think all of their tags are about the place that you're from, rather than using the word race. Okay, good. So my point 0 was there are different races in different countries. My point 1 was there have not always been white people. Point 2, money.
Really?
Wealth has always been linked to the creation of race as an ideology, as an idea here in the US. There's a powerful Marxist-influenced argument, in fact, that whiteness and blackness were really created so that white people who thought they believed in equality, but also thought slavery was fine, could justify that or reconcile those two practices for themselves. But even if you don't,
wait. Did he just say, no, this is not a waste of time, Alex? He literally just said Marxism was racist. He literally just said Marxism is racist. Listen, we're not going to focus, and Jake, we're not going to focus on whether or not what he said is like technically true and how it manifests. He literally just said there is a Marxist idea that is racist. Hang on, let's listen. I want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Races in different countries. My point 1 was there have not always been white people. Point 2, money. Property, wealth has always been linked to the creation of race as an ideology, as an idea here in the US. There's a powerful Marxist-influenced argument, in fact, that whiteness and blackness were really created so that white people who thought they believed in equality, but also thought slavery was fine, could justify that or reconcile those two practices for themselves. But even if you don't accept that as a historical explanation for how race came about, there's really no question that over time, changes in racial identity in the United States are absolutely intimately wrapped up with questions of wealth. So I think at some point Sherwood has some readings for us, but there's a very famous book of how the Irish became white.
That's getting
and there are follow-on books of how, I think it's how Italians became white folks and how Jews became white people, but that really are about like class position is the key to that progression. That as those
I'll write that down,
more
Jake.
wealthy
George
and distance themselves from other sort of non-white or less white or probationary white groups, they become whiter. The second reason why money is so important and so valuable here to think about is, and I said this about being not trying to be flip about it, money is really the best metaphor, certainly not original to me, but for, Sherwood and I have been throwing on this idea that race is a social construction. What does that mean? Money. Money is also a social construction, but if you don't think it's real and you don't think it has value,
money is not a social construction.
My office is 514 Old Mill, and feel free to shove all the money you want under my office door. But
money is real.
Money
is
like
not a
race
social construction.
Depends for its value on social understandings.
If money was a social construction, then inflation would not exist. This guy is a moron. He is a political science professor, and he's talking about how money is socially constructed. Okay, yeah, there's some point to the fact that a $1 bill is made out of the same things as a $20 bill, and therefore we're putting value on whatever is printed on the same piece of paper. Okay, fine. But if money was a social construction, inflation would not exist. We would not be having a crisis right now of almost 10% fucking inflation. AD says he's wrong. Sicilians were not seen as white, dude. Well, they see you as white, AD. They do. I mean, like we've talked about in past weeks, it's starting to change. You're now like a white person of color. But Robin DiAngelo says that you ascended to whiteness. You assimilated to whiteness. Money is not a social construction. Jesus.
On shared social understandings. And money, too, also changes over time. And there's different money in different countries, et cetera. So we can come back to that. But money, the intrinsic connection between wealth and racial identification is absolutely central to understanding what race is in the U.S.
Political science professor. God damn.
I think that's absolutely right. I also think that class has become a marker of race, and poverty is often a symbol of being less likely to be classified as Anglo-Caucasian or white. One of the more interesting books is called...
He's literally saying that white people aren't racist. Or, excuse me, the white people aren't poor. That's the point he's about to make. That white people are not poor. That's racist. That is fundamentally racist.
White trash, and it looks at the links between class and race. My next point really is...
Oh,
that...
AD just sent a big super chat. Thank you for the super chat. AD is going to explain, like, when AD has something to say, he likes to teach us things, and we love him for it. AD says, race is a social construct insofar as social capital is concerned matters on the left where a victim hierarchy exists. I'm white when it's convenient because AD is Italian. Just like Asians are now white, this is so fucking insulting. It is insulting. It is insulting, and it is dismissive of your heritage. And Italians are really proud of their heritage, and you guys have a right to be. And it's like it's insulting and dismissing and condescending. Thank you for the super chat, AD.
Race in the U.S. really was, as Alex said, a question of money. Not in the sense of
yep, Sam,
dollars,
you're probably right.
In the sense of land. And so
land equals
I
money.
think one of the key moments in the U.S. history that you need to understand is a point called Bacon's Rebellion. This actually predates Linnaeus, which is interesting, in which most of the workers in the U.S. were indentured servants. It didn't matter where you were from. You didn't own land, and you were bonded to someone. You could get your freedom over time and work off that debt, but getting access to land was the only way you could really be qualified as a citizen. To have rights, you had to own land. So land was money at that point in time. At that point in time, the wealthy farmers were taking the land away from the indigenous people, but they weren't allowing the freed indentured servants to get the land. And there was a rebellion about this. Sadly, both sides were taking the land away from the indigenous people at that time, but there was a rebellion against these wealthy landowners. And it is argued, and I think a valid argument, of divide and conquer, which is they used the construction of racial groups as a way to avoid this coalition of people taking power away from the wealthy. And so I think looking at Bacon and Rebellion, you begin to see following it the first time racial categories are used in legal systems to define people as white and non-white, to define people as Black or African, right, as indigenous, in ways that legally restricted their rights and also restricted the rights of white people in opportunities. We have the anti-miscegenation laws and literally preventing white people from choosing who to marry. So there are consequences for whites as well as for everyone else, people labeled as white, for these restrictions. Back to you, Alec.
Yeah, I don't so much have a question about that one, Sherwood, is just to agree that period, like documents, I really recommend.
Is this true? I didn't know this, ZXY. A certain mustached man from World War II classified Japanese people as honorary white people, but the Japanese people says, no, we're not white, we're Japanese. I had no idea about that. Is that true? I mean, I'm gonna trust you. You're in the chat all the time, so you have some sort of credibility. But that's actually really interesting. I had no idea.
You know, any kind of study, especially if you can look at original documents, and here's, nod to our colleagues in the history department, but
guys,
a lot of documents
the like
from the
button
1600s,
if you're enjoying the
American
presentation
documents,
so far.
legal records, they just don't use the terms in the way that we expect. You see a reference to somebody and it'll refer to their being a servant or their being a Christian, rather than referring to them. They're just
He used the
they weren't
A
clearly
word
delineated
for white.
It
Gotcha.
wasn't like
That makes sense.
Native Americans or Indians, white person, Black person, Negro, right? There weren't specific language. That wasn't how people are described. If it's a marriage question or it's a criminal justice, notes from an early sort of criminal justice case, things were really in flux in that period, and it's really fascinating material to read. So my third point also.
So what we're saying is that Hitler was the original anti-racist. Should I put that on a sticker or something? I feel like I should put that on a t-shirt. Hitler was the original anti-racist. That won't get me in trouble at all. I will definitely not be canceled for making a t-shirt that says Hitler is the original anti-racist. It's going to go right next to my t-shirt that I have on the list to make that says segregation is so anti-racist. We're going to do a whole anti-racism t-shirt series. We're going to call it the Karlyn's Getting Canceled Anti-Racism t-shirt series. AD says wartime violation of Italian American Civil Liberties Act. Look this up. Another hidden American history. AD, I feel like I should have you on the channel sometime to just school us about like random pieces of American history, particularly in relation to Italians that we just don't know about because we're never taught about them. I think that would be really interesting.
Also sort of links up with that a little bit. And this is something that has been really, I'm
tweeting that right now. Hitler was the original anti-racist. Let's see if I get canceled on Twitter before the end of happy hour. I'm tweeting it right now. Hang on. Stand by. Oh God, this definitely isn't going to get me in trouble at all. Hitler was the original anti-racist. Probably spell anti-racist right if I'm going to make this a real point. Yes. Hitler was the original anti-racist tweet. Okay. This definitely won't get me in trouble at all. Don't report it, Metastep.
God. My third point, people with one drop of African ancestry, or African blood, as they used to say, have not always been black in the United States, legally.
Do you guys know, breaking news from Twitter. Do you guys know how I've been saying that Biden is going to cancel student debt because midterms? Fox News, canceling student debt is still on the table, says the White House. Breaking news 7 minutes ago. Biden's going to cancel student debt. Watch it. I'm saying it. I'm putting my stake in the ground. Biden is going to cancel student debt before November.
State laws in the late 19th century identified explicit percentages by which a person with as much as a grandparent or certainly a great grandparent, someone could be known to have an African American or Negro or a black ancestor and still qualify as white. There's a terrific book on this by Daniel Sharfstein and Charles Chestnut has a great 1889 essay, a great African-American writer. What is
Watch, I'm going to get banned from Twitter before the end of this stream.
Mocking the southern states who have these brutal laws against African-Americans doing all sorts of things, including marrying white people, but then have very different percentages explicitly in their laws, recognizing that certain people could be white even if they had African ancestry. Finally on this, there's a few cases, and again, both Sherwood and I, write to us. We'll send you documents and things to read, and we'd love to talk to you.
Oh, yeah. Already going.
Some court cases, some involving marriage, some involving criminal justice, some involving people going to school, some involving voting by a person who wasn't eligible, somebody else says. Courts in Ohio and South Carolina especially had to face this and said, race, and I love this South Carolina decision, race is a matter for the jury to decide by reputation, reception into society, and by the exercise of the privileges of a white man. So how you were treated by your neighbors could be proof in court that you were white. And courts sometimes acknowledged this person probably, maybe even certainly, has African ancestry, but is white because he is treated that way and has been exercising the privileges of a white man, property ownership, voting, gun ownership, militia service in this community.
Okay, I feel like I was making too many jokes about t-shirts and like Twitter, and I missed the meat of what he was saying. So he's saying that courts have decided that people are white based on property ownership. He's saying that's a legal thing. No, I disagree. He is literally saying that there is a legal precedent for whiteness being described. Now, what he's saying is true, by the way. Whiteness is not about race. Critical race theory is not about race. It's only about power. Whiteness, when they use the term white or whiteness, they actually aren't referring to the color of your skin. They're referring to who owns the power in any situation. And if you own the power, you are considered to be white. And now we're hearing from them that they say there is legal precedent for courts to say that if you are being treated like you have the power, you are considered white.
So you could earn your whiteness despite African ancestry in some communities in the United States, particularly in the 19th century. So that's my third point.
I would second that point. I'm going to put up
you guys are going to make me go viral on Twitter is what's going to happen.
Race,
Jesus.
From Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah.
And
this is one of the greats. One of the great.
He talks about the swarthy Swedes. He also mentions the Italians. I'm amused about Italian.
Sean, I don't think he gave a. Let's rewind a little bit and listen to that piece again, because maybe Sean can suss out where he was talking about the case.
African Americans doing all sorts of things, including marrying white people, but then have very different percentages explicitly in their laws, recognizing that certain people could be white even if they had African ancestry. Finally on this, there's a few cases, and again, both Sherwood and I, write to us. We'll send you documents and things to read, and we'd love to talk to you. But in some court cases, some involving marriage, some involving criminal justice, some involving people going to school, some involving voting by a person who wasn't eligible, somebody else says, courts in Ohio and South Carolina especially had to face this and said, race, and I love this
Ohio and South Carolina
for the jury to decide by reputation, reception into society, and by the exercise of the privileges of a white man. So how you were treated by your neighbors could be proof in court that you were white. And courts sometimes acknowledged this person probably, maybe even certainly, has African ancestry, but is white because he is treated that way and has been exercising the privileges of a white man, property ownership, voting, gun ownership, militia service in this community. So you could earn your whiteness despite African ancestry in some communities in the United States, particularly in the 19th century. So that's my third point.
I would second that point. I'm going to put up just a joking slide about the construction of race from Benjamin Franklin.
Yeah. This is one of the greats. One of the great.
He talks about the swarthy Swedes. He also mentions the Italians. I'm amused about Italians because in one sense we deify everything Roman, and then we discriminated against Italian immigrants.
No, I'm not canceled yet, average person.
So how can the Romans have been this great society and suddenly we don't like it? We don't like Southern Europeans, right? I also want to second Alex's point. The other piece I want to say is that these issues are alive and well today. We don't have the time, but Google Rachel Dolezal. If you want.
Oh, really?
This was several years ago in Spokane, Washington.
Why are you so racist against Rachel Dolezal?
Now, this was rare because Rachel passed as a white person passing as black, but I have family history in my own family of people who were light-skinned enough to pass. And this is in, 1950, 1940. The other thing that I want you to, whenever you see something that says race, not just looking for the definitions, but look how it's used. This was a form when I was applying for a job in 1997. And if you identify as Caucasian, going back to what we both said, people of European, North African, Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, Morocco, Middle Eastern, Syria, Lebanon, right? But black, people of African descent. And then Hispanic, Latinx, people of Spanish descent regardless of their race. And notice at this point in time, they were still saying check only one.
Right.
So I want to push on even the individual definitions we have used and their lack of granularity and willingness in the US to actually look at ethnicity and origin, and you try to use the broad brush of race to clump huge varieties of very different people together. Back to you.
Oh, that's so good, Sherwood. And it's I have to call us, the two of us, out here a little bit because we were laughing earlier at those fools and their earlier classifications, right? Talking about the Hindu and how little they understood. I feel like I'm making the error of like, oh, we've got it figured out now. They didn't know as much as we do today about religion and about South Asian, right, about India, and we're still flailing around. we're still flailing around about what does it mean to be an ethnicity as opposed to a race. So look, my fourth point, final point, as our time is rocketing by, is actually one that's implicit in several of the things that we've talked about. Mixture is the central fact. Did I say the? Sure. Mixture is the central fact of race in North America, race in the United States. And again, time is flying by here, but mixture in a lot of the 19th century, there's a lot of discussion of the beauty of the new race. All the races of the world, some documents say, are merging together here. The English race, the French race, the Irish race are merging here in the United States, whereas others were explicitly hostile to that and were worried about what would happen if Italians mixed with English people and if Jews mixed with the French race and degraded both of them. But then, of course, a mixture also, remember, of people of African ancestry and people of native ancestry, 4 or 5 generations of mixing before the country existed. You can think of it that way. And continuing since.
That doesn't make any sense.
Recently, of course, now, Sherwood just mentioned it.
That doesn't make sense.
Now we mark one or more. It's formal. Racial mixture is now a formalized, measured part of American racial identity. And in broader sociological terms, I think you're going to have Professor Nikki Khanna from sociology, a remarkable scholar on precisely this topic. But I wanted to make sure to make this my fourth and final point, that mixture really is the central, just social fact and legal and definitional puzzle of race in America over time.
Well said. I guess, you know, even the idea for me, Alec, of getting it right, still, even that needs to be problematized when we talk about race, because there isn't anything to get right. And that's the problem why it keeps getting redefined and restructured, because every time somebody thinks they've managed to cram it into the proper container, it spills out over the edges, or they discover there's a leak in it somewhere, in my view. And the other half of the problem that I think will not go away, you know, I think there's a funny sci-fi book, if you like. It's called Lathe of Heaven by Ursula Le Guin, where this person tries to get rid of race by turning everyone gray in the world. And so I think that, as you said, because wealth and all of these other factors are involved, even if we could, in some magical way, get rid of the concept of race, there are a whole bunch of other hierarchical structures in place that would consistently force marginalization on certain groups of people. You know, one of the most amusing stories is we think of African Americans as basketball players, but in the early history of basketball, they thought that the Jews were better basketball players because they were such collectivists and that they would be better at these team sports, right?
Yes.
They used to be mad because
the Jews, the basketball players of the world, no offense, Jews,
Caucasians in the sprints. And then they got mad because Africans started winning all the distance races, right? So you can see how these things change. And I think that the important
wait.
Yes, it is.
Are you saying that race might also come with certain biological realities that make people better at basketball? Is that what's being implied? Is that there are biological realities that might make some people, well, let me just cut to the chase. Are there certain biological realities that might make Black people better at basketball naturally than Jewish people? Is that what we're implying right now? I feel like it is.
It is a social construct, but
as a collective,
continue
of
to
course,
look at the real lived impacts, which are even now showing up even more starkly with COVID-19 on the lived experiences of a whole variety of different people as a result of the way we've constructed race.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm really glad that you phrased it just that way, Sherwood, and closed us with that, because I do think there's a risk of, you know, if we spend all this time wrestling with,
I thought race was just a social construct that had no biological realities at all.
Nonsense. It risks sort of moving into this feeling that it isn't real.
Silly me.
You know what I mean? That there's this you kind of get this thought like it's merely a social construction, or it doesn't exist, right? And that they're not. It's both. It's totally contradictory, but it is deeply powerful and deeply real.
Silly, all of us. Incognito says race mixing is normalized, then this argument is moot. It's like this. We have had 35 minutes in session 1 of contradiction. That's all this has been. It's like they say one thing and then 5 minutes later they say something that completely contradicts the original thing. Thank God this only has 200 views on YouTube. People might think these were college professors.
And deeply shapes what I perceive the world to be, and deeply perceives
3
how
more
we treat,
minutes
right,
of this
etc.
one, Boomer.
And it's also true that it is created legally and historically and culturally in this way.
I think you frame it well, and what I often say in my classes is you have to be able to hold multiple and contradictory ideas in your head at the same time.
This is not a seltzer,
or
by the way.
you will
Not a
not
seltzer.
get to a useful place around things like race in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you
Of course,
said,
our brains, that's cognitive dissonance, right? And our brains hate that. And our brains are like, make
That's
that
not
screaming
cognitive
noise in my head
dissonance.
stop. I would like to resolve that in one way or the other.
That's not cognitive
and
dissonance.
the
That's
challenge
not
with
what that
race
is.
that certain people have had the privilege
Wait.
of being able to
Yeah.
resolve it for everyone else.
Wait,
Thank you very much.
they just admitted that it was a contradiction, and that's why there's cognitive dissonance, right? Yeah, they just admitted there was a contradiction. They did.
Right? Certain
Yeah.
people get to not think about it. Yeah.
And then
I'm gonna
let's explain
close,
that away with cognitive
Alec has
dissonance.
done a wonderful job of mentioning some things. I want to just put them out there
Hang on.
for you. There
All right, we should probably listen to that again because I was talking over it. Okay, because that was actually an important point. I was talking. Okay, and then they finish this up. So hang on. Okay.
A social construction, or it doesn't exist, right? And that they're not. It's both. It's totally contradictory, but it is deeply powerful and deeply real, and deeply shapes what I perceive the
God.
world to be, and deeply perceives how we treat, right, etc. And it's also true that it is created legally and historically and culturally in this way.
I think you frame it well, and what I often say in my classes is you have to be able to hold multiple and contradictory ideas in your head at the same time, or you will not get to a useful place around things like race in the U.S.
Holy shit! Sam, you were right. That was completely fucking Orwellian. That was completely fucking Orwellian. Wow, hang on. I want to listen to that one more time, just for emphasis. This is the most Orwellian thing I've ever heard in any of the happy hours before.
I think you frame it well, and what I often say in my classes is you have to be able to hold multiple and contradictory ideas in your head at the same time, or you will not get to a useful place around things like race in the U.S. Because as you
Of course,
said,
our brains, that's cognitive dissonance, right? And our brains hate that. And our brains are like, make that screaming noise in my head stop. I would like to resolve that in one way or the other. But yeah,
and the challenge with race is that certain people have had the privilege of being able to resolve it for everyone else.
Thank you very much. Right? Certain people get to not think about it. Yeah.
I'm going to close.
Okay.
Alec has done a wonderful job of mentioning some things. I want to just put them out there for you. There are all of these and many more books. So these are just a few. We mentioned some of these titles. Lots of different things out there, a lot of more modern writing.
It's the most honest thing. Yes, it's the most honest
like
thing.
Life on the Color Line. Some of them are much more scholarly writings, like The Invention of the White Race by Allen. But I really encourage you, if you're sort of one person who wants to just sort of sit with a book and think about this rather than engage in conversations, there are a lot of opportunities to read and watch things that will help you do that.
All right. That's session 1. Let's go back to session 2 now, which is where we originally started. Now, this is the follow-up. Wait. No, that's not what it is. No, not that one. This one.
An identifier for yourself.
And now for those who just joined, so so that was part 1 of this session, and then there was a part 2, and we accidentally started watching part 2 first because I wasn't paying close enough attention, but we've just gone back and watched part 1, and now we're going to watch the follow-up session to this, which is part 2. Please mount the like button if you haven't already. Please make sure you are subscribed to whatever platform you're watching on, whether that be YouTube or Odyssey or Rockfin. Hi to Simon over on Rockfin. We've got Rumble going. We've got Getter going. Please make sure you subscribe, follow, like, do all the things on whatever platform you're watching on. That would be fantastic.
What does white mean?
Oh, wait.
Starting with a small.
Hang on. I have to throw Patrice a bone as well, because I just finished my seltzer, which wasn't really a seltzer. It was delicious, but it was not a seltzer. When professors advocate for double think to find the truth. Yes. Have I been banned on Twitter yet? Let's see. I don't think so. I don't think I have yet. You know what it is? It's Friday, and people aren't really paying attention. That's probably why. All right. Let's open up the Raspberry Goose. There's lots of residue from the first beer, but that's okay. That's all right. Oh, this Patrice, you probably were right about this being a better first choice. Always got to listen to Patrice, man. Patrice knows what's up. Look at that. Nice pink beer. Now, this is a raspberry flavored goose. Cheers, everyone. Happy Friday. Oh, I can definitely smell the raspberries. Holy crap. Yep. This would have been a better first option. So Patrice was right, and I own it when I'm wrong. Me being wrong doesn't happen very often, but when it does, I own it, and I admit it, and I give credit where credit is due. Phil, we can see you. Phil's having trouble for some reason. Did someone accidentally ban Phil? Never ban Phil. Phil can say and do whatever he wants, and we're never banning him because we love him just the way he is. All right, let's go.
Easy question. I'm sure that's a good way to edge into it. It means different things in different settings. It's kind of
you guys can admonish me for being wrong. It's okay. It's a rare opportunity for you to admonish me.
And an identity that has been attached to me by this society.
Wait.
This is a term that I have learned to.
Did he just play the victim? He was asked, what does white mean? And he was like, this is a label that has been attached to me by society. He just played the victim. Listen to this.
In our short time. Alec, when you refer to white and use that as an identifier for yourself, what does white mean?
Starting with a small and easy question. I'm sure that's a good way to edge into it. It means different things in different settings. It's kind of shorthand for this is a label and an identity that has been attached to me by this society. This is a term that I have learned to use for myself. This is an identity that I currently understand myself as, where if I was 200 years old or 150 years old, I might have called myself German, a member of the German race, member of the Irish race, member of the Scotch race.
This guy is so embarrassed that he's white. He's so, he is like, this guy is like, listen, you have to feel sorry for him because he's been brainwashed by the people of Burlington, Vermont, and by the people at University of Vermont to believe that it is a bad thing to be a white man in our society. He feels very guilty. He is our classic white male savior that just feels bad because it's been beaten into him, probably by the white liberal women in his life, that he is a bad person. Gypsy Witch Production says, yet society can label me Italian X. Yes, well, they try to. You don't have to accept the label, though, man. You never have to accept a label that people give you. You can tell people to fuck off.
But these days, those aren't identified or thought of as races anymore.
Yeah, Hitler would have loved this guy.
My sister did some early genealogical work a decade or so ago and found some Jewish ancestry, but that's never been part of my identity. So I would also be not mentioning that if I referred to myself as white. But in different settings, it can do different kinds of work and different kinds of meaning to identify myself that way. It can sort of take on more or less or different meanings, I think, really depending on who else who else I'm talking with and what these words mean to them and why it's important to them. So Sherwood, of course, I have the same question for you. What racial language means for you when you use those terms for yourself. And I want to add a little bit of a wrinkle too, which is, when do you choose to use this precise language of I identify as Black or I identify as African American, as opposed to saying I am?
Nice twist, Alec.
Yeah, so when do you say I identify?
I think
that is a good question.
For me, race has a twofold meaning: how I see myself and how others see me. So there's the identifying label that's being placed on me by others, and sometimes more explicitly and sometimes less explicitly. And then there's the ownership or self-identification that I have, which has changed, over time. I steer away a little bit from African American, sometimes having spent time in Tanzania and Kenya, because I think that meaning can be misconstrued sometimes in the US. To go back to when I use it, that's a harder question. It's really sort of a piece for me of, obviously, if I can't be seen, and I think it's important to have my identity known, then obviously I'm going to self-identify as a Black person so that there's not some misunderstanding about the language or ideas I'm expressing. In writing, I might also feel that it's really important to do that, to sort of position who I am as a writer, as an author, if I'm putting something out there. I think in conversation, it only usually comes up for me if there seems to be ambiguity in some way. I tend to go on the assumption that my race is starkly visible and I don't really need to self-identify unless there's some ambiguity. And that's more likely, I've found, to happen when I'm in a group of BIPOC people, especially an international group, and where ethnicity might be more dominant than the racial question.
Mm-hmm. And how about saying I am as opposed to I identify as? Is there any sort of intentionality to that language for you, or that choice?
That's a good question that I haven't really thought about in depth.
You have one job, that is to think about these questions.
You can feel free to. I'm very curious.
He's like, I don't want to put you on the spot.
I really wrestle.
Yeah.
I am as a sense of ownership, a sense of self-possession. I think when I use, I identify as Black, that's much more of a case of someone's posed a question to me. In the worst case scenario, which doesn't happen as often as it used to when I was younger, that really sort of sometimes innocent but disturbing question of what are you can be posed in terms of confusion about racial or ethnic identity as a person of color. And that's when I would be really likely to say I am Black versus I identify as Black.
He acts like this is, oh my fucking God. He acts like this is like a great burden for him.
With this, and I think ended with
just be comfortable with who you are.
There's a stronger sense of ownership, of autonomy, would you say, in the straightforward I am, as opposed to identify. Identify doesn't have that strength in your experience.
For me personally, I think that's accurate. And for you?
I also struggle with this. I like the work that Identify does. It's a reminder to myself and others that there is a language step and a cultural element to it, and in some cases a degree of choice for some people in some settings.
Oh,
But it does
you mean
lack
we have
something, and
choice, like Rachel
I'm also
Dolezal?
aware that for a lot of listeners, it's very.
Do you guys think I should try to get Rachel Dolezal to come on my channel? Because it's something I've thought about. Like, Rachel Dolezal is actually like a really interesting character to me. I think she got like, given where we are now, I actually think, and this might be controversial to say, I actually think Rachel Dolezal got like a really fucking raw deal, considering where we are today. Rachel Dolezal was like ahead of her time, and she just likes what she likes. She likes the culture that she likes. She's actually like not a bad artist. Her art is actually kind of cool. I might try to get Rachel Dolezal.
Unfamiliar language, and I need to weigh the possible risk of losing a connection.
Yeah, she has
with
a right to
somebody,
do whatever she wants to
adding
do.
some
Who
distance
cares?
between us by using language that they're unfamiliar with and may not literally may not understand. I don't want to go too off into this because I'd really love to hear. Well, honestly, I'd really like to know people others who are participating in this. A lot of people with regard to.
Hang on. For those of you who don't know about Rachel Dolezal, Patrice says you don't know. Patrice, I guarantee you know. You just probably don't know the name. She's a white lady who identified as black and actually got like really high ranking in like the NAACP. And she totally passed as like a light-skinned black person, has her hair. I mean, she actually like makes money like braiding women's hair. That's one of the and she just like she likes that culture. It's her preference. And so she's a white lady that identifies as black. And she got a really shit deal. She got canceled really, 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 really badly. Really badly. Do I have any of her art? No, but I've looked at it and I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's bad at all. And I feel bad for her. Like, she got canceled so badly that I guess I saw an interview with her probably about a year ago where like she cannot find a job, and this is several years after she got canceled really badly. She still can't find a job because her name got totally dragged through the mud. I mean, I just feel bad. Like, she has every right to live how she wants to live, and I don't know. I think she's a really interesting case.
Pronouns, for example. I use pronouns as opposed to I am a man. There's a lot of work being done on this. I think it's really the same kind of question. How I describe what words I use to describe myself, or what words I prefer people to attach to my identity and my body. If you're speaking to me in this conversation, I mean, I think Sherwood, your answer was really profound, and I can do this in one run-on sentence, but I did some interviews last summer in people coming out of prison, and I asked, instead of saying what their racial identity was from my notes, I asked them, and I chose to ask, how do you identify yourself racially? And it was a confusing question for them. It was not the right question. I stayed with it for consistency's sake, and I don't really know what I should have gone with, but they were not people who had lived in the university campus language community that I've lived in for so many years. And you could see it on their faces and hear it in their responses. I mean, just in a couple of cases, I asked, what language do you use to identify yourself racially? And 2 people said English. And that was their answer. And I had to decide, like, do I embarrass us both by clarifying my question, or do I just write that down and say, move on? So I'd be really interested to know what choice others are making about when to say I am and when to say I identify as, and kind of how that's felt for you and how that's felt in the conversations that you've been in. So that's one question that I would put to others who are on the conversation here.
Well said. Thank you, Alec. We've got a question here. How do you recommend to broach the question of race in the workplace with colleagues?
Don't. Why?
Wait, do I have to go first? I honestly, this is not, Look, the answer depends 100% on context. It really does. It might be a cop out, but it's also the right answer, which is that, I have a friend who refuses to take responsibility for this metaphor, even though he used it. I'm sure of it, but strike while so the one piece of advice I would have is, if you can, strike while the iron is cool. That is to say, if there's already a fight, a dispute, a loaded, intense personal thing happening in whatever setting it is.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Breaking news, according to Carl in the comments on my other YouTube channel. And those of you who were there for last Sassy Saturday's stream will understand this. I heard Adam mocking you on someone else's stream, and now I understand very much what you're saying on your stream. Oh, so Adam was mocking me after he was proved colossally incorrect on my Saturday stream. I am shocked at this revelation, and he can go fucketh himself.
To fail if you try it at that moment. So it really depends on context. It really depends what's going on. If there's a way and a time so that's one thing. And
I don't know what he said. They just said Adam was mocking me.
I don't know what it's so context dependent.
Does anyone know what stream Adam was on yesterday? Because they just said that he was mocking me. I don't know what he said. I don't know what it said. I don't know who. I'm literally going by a comment on my YouTube channel. I have no idea. I am also curious as to what little Adam said. I am also curious. Okay, I know it's off topic. We have to focus.
Dependent. You have to choose what it is that you care about most. Triage is a vicious metaphor, but you have to choose what you care about most. Sustain the relationship, make this point. I'd like to make these other 7. I'd like to educate them about, lynching, whatever.
Was it Rakita Law?
But prioritize.
Really? He mocked me. Why the fuck is he on Rakita Law? How is he smart enough to stand up to that guy? Because he's Rakita Law is really smart. Nick or Rakita, I don't know how to pronounce his name. He's really fucking smart. How would he stand up to that guy? Yeah, Brandon does everything. I mean, I don't fault Brandon for being on Adam's stream. Wow. Well, I don't really care. Whatever. I proved my point emphatically, and he, can do whatever he wants to do.
Choose a moment that's less likely to backfire and blow up. The answer is really good.
In other news, I got about 1,000 new subs today from from being featured in the India Times. Apparently, I started getting a lot of subs and a lot of random views on my YouTube channel today, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" I apparently was featured in the India Times. I had no idea. But I love Indian food, and so I'm really thrilled at this revelation, and I hope to one day visit India. And so maybe I can cultivate a fan base in India, so that when I go to India to visit, because I want to go to the Taj Mahal and eat real Indian food, maybe I'll already have people there and I can have a meetup. That'd be pretty great.
Depend on context.
And I agree with everything you said, and I would probably just add that in that context, and you hinted at it, what's the relation?
Tom J asked, why was I featured? It was for, you know what it was for? Patrice was basically featured too. Patrice, you were basically in the India Times. It was for the porn video. It was for us talking about the porn class that's in the... Patrice is we're trying to try to get Patrice, I think she volunteered, to audit the porn course at that Utah college where they're having people watch porn together. So, yeah, that's what they featured. It was a clip from the porn video. Yes, Patrice, congratulations. You are now famous in India.
Relationship. Is this a long-term relationship, and you know for a fact you can get back to this conversation tomorrow or next week? Or is this a one-time conversation? And as you said, you need to weigh the risks and opportunities and whether it's practical. I also think that there's a difference between, me raising the question of race as a Black person and you raising the question of race, depending on who we're talking with as well.
Yeah.
So our own identities play into how that conversation is going to be received.
Why are you talking about race at work?
Should be weighed.
You don't
And
need to talk about
probably
race at
the
work.
last piece that
Why
I'd
are
say
you
that when you're
talking about
trying to
race
have
at
that
work?
conversation, you hinted at this, I think, Alec. What am I trying to accomplish here? If someone's doing something harmful and I'm trying to get them to stop, that's really different than if I think someone's being sincere and they're confused and this is really an opportunity to engage someone and I feel like I have the psychological, physical, emotional energy to do that. So
Yeah.
I think there's some self-care.
The article is on my Twitter.
Too. Yeah.
Someone tagged me in it.
And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Just one last thing, if it's possible, and actually people disagree about this, but I believe that, again, in certain situations, that actually kind of misdirection, if you will, can be valuable. That is, starting with a different kind of identity question, something that you think might be easier to begin with that particular individual or in that particular setting, pertaining, maybe it's to gender or maybe it's to sports teams, right? But going with respect the way that our brains actually operate. Treat ourselves as we are rather than as we wish we were. And if going right to the hardest possible question is unlikely to succeed, sometimes it can be helpful to start with a different context and a different type of identity question. So yes, what else do we have?
We have a question which I'm going to read, and I totally agree that misdirection works well. I had a woman once ask me, are you mixed? And my response was, aren't we all?
That's actually a good response. Honestly, that's actually a good response. I don't mind that response.
I'm going to read.
There's a famous old poem, by the way. Sorry. But there's a famous old poem about the English being mixed in like 1750 or something like that. The Anglos and the Saxons. Like it wasn't a joke.
Does anyone want to guess why they are so focused on declaring everyone mixed? I have a theory about this, and I will say my theory once people have given their answers because I don't want to influence you. Why do you think they are so obsessed by saying everyone is mixed? We heard it from this guy in the isn't this like the perfect freeze frame for this guy? But like we heard it in the last presentation and now they're bringing it up again in this one. Why are they so obsessed with being like, everyone is mixed? I don't even know why this is a thing. Everyone is mixed. It's been going on for centuries. We were mixed before we even got here. Because complete assimilation is the end goal. A hive mind. I think those are good answers. To make race about power and not about skin color. I think that's a good answer. Because they're mixed. Yeah, just T. Everyone is mixed, so whiteness can be applied to our political enemies. I think that's part of it. Yeah, I think there's some damage control. I don't think Diane, I think you're giving them too much credit. I don't think it's because most people are actually mixed. I don't think that that's what this is. Wait, this is happy hour. Is it possible to watch what he says about you at the end of the stream? I mean, we're gonna try. Beigeism. Yeah, I think that all of your guys' answers, I honestly think I think LK has really the answer that I was thinking of, but I actually think many of your answers are good as well. I think it's because of white guilt. And I think part of it is like they want the elimination of white people to rid themselves of their own personal guilt. Deborah says it makes an easy push for equity because everyone is always equal. Yeah, I think we had some great answers there.
All right, sorry. What do we got? What's next?
So we have our first question from the audience.
I thought he said they already asked a question.
I've been having confusion making clear the difference between race and ethnicity. Do you have a simple way?
Yes, you won nothing. You won nothing. But you can savor your victory in nothing.
Do you have a simple way
Everyone
that
else
can
won
help
too.
me?
Everyone wins.
I'm assuming help me make the distinction. I'll take a shot at this. As Alex says, I've talked about, race is a rather unique social construction that doesn't outside of sort of Eurocentric society in some ways. So, for example, if I'm in China, no one's having a conversation about race. They're having a conversation about ethnicity. Ethnicity is linked to the language you speak, the region that your people are from, the cultural traditions you practice, wherever you are located in the world. So people don't necessarily get racialized until they come to the US. So
can everyone just appreciate for a moment? I'm going back to the India Times thing. I'm sorry. Can everyone just appreciate for a moment that both Patrice and I are now famous in India for talking about kinky shit that went on in the Mormon temples? Let's just savor that reality for a moment. That's real. That just happened today. We are famous in India for talking about kinky Mormon temple rituals. What a time to be alive.
So I'll use Asian as an example. Since I mentioned it, people would be Hmong, they would be Laotian, they would be Vietnamese, they would be Malay, they would be Chinese, and within Chinese, they might be Han, right? Or they might be Mongolian. They don't become Asian until they go somewhere else. So I think if you think of race as an artificial construct based solely on appearance most often, and ethnicity having to do with the historical ties of people to land and region, and often language.
Yeah, this is
That's
true.
my short answer.
This is true.
Switch to you,
You
Al.
never know. You don't know.
Yes. Ask an academic for a short answer, and that Sherwood did pretty well. I'll try with this too, with certainly agreeing with what
focus.
You just said, Sherwood. So my first answer would be ethnicity connotes. There are not sharp differences, sadly, for better or worse, between these two terms, in my experience. Ethnicity, though, does connote more cultural difference. Race tends to refer more narrowly to bodies, not a sharp line between them.
I thought there was no biological reality of race. You're contradicting yourself.
Suggestions, overtones, connotations, associations with cultural, linguistic, religious differences. Race tends to be more narrowly linked to bodies. But again, the second, I would also say this one is quite different, but sometimes ethnicity is about divisions, relatively minor divisions within a group. So in the United States, it's often used that way, referring to Irish as an ethnicity or Italian as an ethnicity. Those are ethnic groups within a broader racial group. Again, I think both of our responses indicate these are just words that our language uses right now to refer to the way that we identify our bodies. They're conventional terms. That is to say, they're relatively recent in having these meanings that we give to them. So the classic example right now, of course, is the census, referring to Latino identity.
Sin got a bingo. Sin got bingo. Congratulations to Sin. Well played, Sin. All right, now we're going for blackout bingo. We'll see if anyone gets it.
Not a racial group. And again, just to blame the census, which is always a good idea, for our confusion about these things, on the census today, formally in American law, you can answer an ethnic question separately from, with no commitment to a specific answer on the racial question.
Thank you. We've got another question from the audience here. I'll let you start. I'm going to read this. I'm concerned with language.
Oh, Grandma Nay got a bingo too. Congratulations to Grandma Nay.
Instead of racism.
Well done.
The example is when media talks about the problem of race, or the US needs to deal with race. This implies that race rather than racism is the problem. It seems to quietly reinforce the idea that diversity is problematic. Can you address this?
Oh, really? I don't think it says that at all, but okay.
Yeah, that's like four thorny problems sort of linked together. Yeah, and I take the questioner's concern here at the end that in certain settings, stating the question that way evokes, how does it feel to be a problem? Who is that? Oh God, strike me down for forgetting. Is that Du Bois? Is it Langston Hughes? How does it feel to be a problem? Which I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting this. I'm trying to look at and try to say something useful about this question. I think partly,
I'm trying
I think
to
this
say
is the questioner's
something
premise,
useful.
that sometimes the media is
Dare
trying
to
to
dream.
identify
to
a
dream.
problem and is scared to use the word racism, and is trying to sort of gesture towards the problem in a broader way, perhaps without, and then unintentionally doing this damage and suggesting that the presence of difference is what the problem is. I guess I'm a little bit, it's a good long question. I'm not sure I agree with that premise in all cases, though. Because there are different types of problems that we have. Understanding what race is and is not is a separate question in some instances from handling the kinds of discriminatory practices that constitute racism, the systems that constitute racism. So I'm not sure it's always a mistake. I'm not sure it always has that kind of connotation to say the United States still hasn't sorted out its problem with race. I don't think that stated that. I don't think that means the problem is that there are non-white people here. I don't know. I think this is a really good question, a hard question to wrestle with, but I don't.
Don't worry, guys.
I don't feel like I can
don't
really
worry.
Give a clear sort of
The
response
problem
to it.
is not that there are
Charlotte?
non-white people here. Oh my God, that was so fucking racist.
I'm sort of on the same page. I think the
Why would
first
you
example
even say that?
has more potential to be problematic for me. The problem of race.
I kind of want to clip him and just edit out the word "not" and have him say the problem is that there are non-white people here. Like, my God. He doesn't know what he's saying. That's the problem. He has no idea what he's saying.
Race,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of
Wait. Oh,
people having race
that was them,
is
not
not the
me.
problem. The way we've constructed race, and that even has a passive voice way that's problematic for me. Who got to construct race? Who gets to legally construct race has historically not been people of color, right? So that's where I agree with you that the race itself is a problem that needs to be talked about. How it was constructed, why it was constructed, the very conversation we started around this. But I also think that, as you said, sometimes people are uncomfortable. I think in its worst version, people don't see themselves as racial beings. And so
No,
if you're
I do not see myself as a racial being.
You don't see yourself as race. And so you're putting those issues on the racial other, the people of color. Oh,
fuck off.
So I think it can really be.
No, I see myself as someone who happens to be white or French or Irish or whatever the fuck you want to categorize me as. But the color of my skin is the least interesting part about me. It is not something I have any control over at all. So no, I do not see myself as a racial being because it is not something I have any control over. I can do nothing about it. The only thing I can control is how I show up in the world to other people. And I refuse to treat people differently based on elements that they cannot control. All right, I might be getting a little drunk. I might be starting to get a buzz, just so you guys are aware. We still have half an hour of this
problematic
presentation.
Sometimes. How you tell, that's the thorny piece, I think. I think if, to go back to where we were, are you talking about discriminatory behavior? Then it's racism. Are you talking about how society has constructed race? Then let's talk about the constructions of race. They aren't the same thing, but they do overlap.
Yeah, I really want to thank the questioner, because this is a really good, it's almost like a post-it note for my brain, post-it note for our brains. of like just to watch out for this usage. You know, if I'm tempted to use this language that the questioner has identified, is that really what I want to say, or do I want to say the problem is racism? And I think that's really helpful. I do have to note, though, that there's always been, and sometimes it's an explicitly Marxist critique that would use a specific, very direct, clear, forceful language. Sometimes it's a less Marxist, but still sort of class, poverty-focused critique that says a problem that American politics has is that American politics, interest groups, social movements have not focused enough on poverty, on economic inequality, and that race and racism get in the way of that. Again, a stronger Marxist critique would say that racial identity is a false consciousness, and that it's our class position that is ultimately the most important thing. But again, I take the questioner's point that even in those places, racism would probably be the more accurate term to be used there. So that's a really good question.
Thank you. We've got another one here.
Alex is spreading. Oh, not that one. That one. Alex is spreading rumors. So I got an email today from my publisher because they update me every single week on like they're trying to do publicity for the book. And they told me they reached out to Dennis Prager. And I was like, that's probably not going to work out. I don't think they're happy with me for like basically telling Prager to fuck off. But I feel entitled to, man. PragerU canceled me for a spiritual belief that is not a freaking Abrahamic spiritual belief. And then on the same day, they sent out a fundraising email saying, we're censored. Give us money because we're censored. F them. And the thing is, too, that I actually know that Dennis Prager has the same beliefs that I do about hell not being real because I've seen video of him saying it. And they still canceled me because reasons.
If race is a social construction, why continue to use it? Why not stop using it entirely and simply refer to our only race as human or Homo sapien?
Oh yeah, I did a whole video about it, just for people who don't know. So after Newsweek did a hit piece on me where they blatantly lied, PragerU, when a reporter from Newsweek reached out to them because they were writing a hit piece on me where they lied in the fucking headline. What they did is they took a tweet out of context of a larger conversation about spiritual beliefs and they made it seem like I was being anti-Semitic when I wasn't. And then PragerU took down my fucking video in response to a Newsweek reporter reaching out to them to ask for questions. And I found out about it from leftists on Twitter because they never bothered to reach out to me and ask what happened. And it's like of all fucking people who should know about media chicanery and hit pieces, it should be PragerU. But they played right into it. I lost so much respect for them. Want nothing to do with them. And it makes me sad because I actually think that Dennis Prager is really smart. I saw Jake in the chat saying, here we go. I'm still going to listen. I don't care if you listen to Dennis Prager. I think Dennis Prager is really smart and really nuanced in his belief, which made it all the more ironic that PragerU canceled me for saying something that Dennis Prager literally fucking believes. Dennis Prager literally fucking believes exactly what I said. I've heard him say it. But here we are. No, they don't have a hell, which is exactly the point I was making. But apparently that doesn't matter. Anyway, moving on. By the way, guys, I'm not actually upset that the video was taken down because I was kind of ready to move on from that anyway. And that is the truth, believe it or not. I'm upset at the hypocrisy. It's not that the video was taken down because like I didn't want to be the woman that went to the Trump rally forever and a day for the rest of my life, even though I loved that video and I loved that story and I loved that it meant so much to so many people. It's the hypocrisy that bothers me. It's not that the video got taken down, it's the hypocrisy. Oh, the Hitler tweet was a total fucking psyop. They don't give a fuck. The Hitler tweet was a total fucking psyop. It's true. It's true.
They always have to try first. I guess that's fair.
I don't think Dennis will tell you not to. I don't think they will.
Of us saying context matters, well then, that's fair. But this one too is one where if your view is we need to pay attention to this problem in order to address this problem, we need to be aware of this element of our identity in order to solve problems brought about by
it was a psyop.
Racial identity.
Listen,
that's deeply
I was trolling with the Hitler tweet. I was trolling. It was totally to fuck with people. All right, we're gonna watch the video now. We're gonna be serious. No more talk about Prager. We're focusing. Focus, all of you. Focus.
Paradoxical, and maybe it's not possible in certain settings, but that's the answer. The answer is, if it is my view that in this setting, whether it's a workplace or a political system, there are substantial inequalities linked to this part of our identities, then paying more attention to this part of our identities may be a valuable way to tackle those inequalities. It's a great Supreme Court dissenting opinion. In order to get beyond racism, we must first take account of race. There is no other way. That's the answer. Tackling racism requires paying attention to race and racial categories. There is absolutely, it's at least a paradox, if not a conflict there, that paying attention to race in the interest of diminishing racial inequality, it is not a kind of linear, there's quite a wrinkle there and quite a turn. But that's the sort of short answer. Paying more attention to this form of our identity is necessary at this time and place in order to try to diminish the inequalities that are brought about by or linked to this part of our identities.
Hang on. I have a question. Jake, do you know what Adam said? I don't know what he said. If you know what he said, we can watch it live. Give me a video and a timestamp and we'll watch it live.
I completely agree that there's no way to fix the problem if you don't recognize that it exists. I'm also concerned with that type of language. It reminds me of the colorblind position of, well, I don't see race. To which I usually ask, well, what would it mean if you did?
The white guy just said something wrong.
Because not seeing it implies that there's a problem with noticing, and I want to hear what you think the problem with noticing it is. But given the history in this country of the constructions, whether it's looking at indigenous people, whether it's looking at the times when Jews and Irish and Italians were considered racially marginalized groups, the continued discrimination historically against BIPOC people, Latinx, African American, Asian American, it's hard to make an argument that stopping talking about race is going to significantly end discrimination.
They're not going to present any data that discrimination happens in any significant form.
Here is, you need to tell me how, if you're going to stop talking about sexism, how is it going to stop sexism?
Sexism isn't real.
About the difference between men and women in terms of income and all these other things. Well, that's not entirely true. It does sometimes, and we can stop talking about sex as a thing because it's also a social construct.
No.
How is that going to end sexism?
So no. Gender is not a social construct. Fuck right off. You don't get to tell me I'm not a woman. I have earned this. My God, these people piss me off.
I don't see how ending a conversation at this point in the world around race and racism allows us to actually fix the problem. And I would argue that if someone was, in my view, misinformed enough to simply remove race from all of the census data, that might end a particular part of the conversation. But I don't see how it's going to change structural and institutional racist inequalities in the society in any substantial way, because you haven't altered people's actual view of racial hierarchy.
Yeah, it is hard though. I mean, there are, and when you look historically, just a couple quick things here, and we can move on to a different question. But there clearly are settings in which people are seeing race too much, or seeing religious identity too much, and doing damage by seeing it too much. I mean, that's a sort of abbreviated way to put it. It's the way they're
how
seeing it and what they think they're
interesting.
seeing when they see it. I should say we. That's the problem. But and then they're seeing race too little, right? That's what you're alluding to, a situation where someone's refusing to acknowledge that you have an identity that's actually extremely relevant to the social setting. But you, Sherwood, in our first conversation, explained, as I thought, very well, that there are certain settings where if you're presenting something at a scientific conference about some field work that you've done and what you've observed about plants and animals, it shouldn't be relevant. Your racial identity shouldn't be relevant to anyone. And anyone who comes up to you afterwards and says, makes some comment about what your presentation refers to your blackness, that would be wrong. That would be seeing race too much. But in other settings, if they refuse to acknowledge your blackness, that might be seeing race too little. I mean, and there is the historical question of like Anglo-Teutonic Americans used to be really good at spotting the Celts. You could really see Irishness. It was really easy to see Irishness and Italianness, let alone Jewishness. And today people don't really have that skill anymore, if skill is the right word for it.
Really?
There was an
wait.
wait.
Is he saying that we can't tell when people are Irish or Italian or Jews? Okay, Irish can be a little tricky sometimes, granted. But I'm sorry, I absolutely can tell when people are Italian, and I absolutely can tell most of the time when people are Jewish. Come on, dude. That's just inaccurate. It's not like 100%, but like it's like a significant percent. You can not always. You can almost always tell when someone is Italian. They are not shy about telling you that they're Italian. They will let you know.
About understanding racism as strictly interpersonal instead of systemic. And this edges a little bit, well, debatably, away from our sort of core question today in some ways. But I think this, too, is a really important point because we really are dogged and in the sense of limited in our cultural conversation by the one definition of racism. To my genuine surprise, like I thought that in the last 20 years that it actually is starting to change. I shouldn't say that, but a very specific.
No, Scots are white.
Racism is conscious belief in supremacy. That is the
what?
Still the
wait! He just gave the incorrect definition of racism. Hang on. He is a non-believer. We now know for sure he is a non-believer. He just gave the incorrect definition of racism. Let's listen.
Jewishness. And today people don't really have that skill anymore, if skill is the right word for it. There was an earlier kind of follow-up question about understanding racism as strictly interpersonal instead of systemic. And this edges a little bit, well, debatably, away from our sort of core question today in some ways. But I think this, too, is a really important point because we really are dogged and in the sense of limited in our cultural conversation by one definition of racism. To my genuine surprise, like I thought that in the last 20 years that it actually is starting to change. I shouldn't say that, but a very specific sort of racism is conscious belief in supremacy. That is still the dominant definition. I'm not racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body. I know I'm not racist because those are all based. Is this politician racist? How will we determine if he or she actually is racist? Those are all really insistently focused on, like, there is one dominant definition of that word that says it's conscious intent by a person.
He's trying to set up the argument that all white people are racist. That's what he's trying to do. But what he inadvertently did is acknowledge that the vast majority of people in this country still believe, and this is good for us, this is not bad, that racism has to do with the perception of superiority of one race over another. He just acknowledged that. He just acknowledged that their bullshit definition of systemic racism and people are racist because they're white is not the dominant definition. This is good news, guys. Let's all just take a moment to celebrate.
Conscious belief in supremacy by the individual. And it's that intent, interpersonal definition of it, as opposed to systemic and structural definitions of it. As opposed to, you can be racist because you participate in a racist system. You can be racist with very good intentions. Anglos have done a great deal of that. They seemed good to those people at the time, but they were clearly racist in hindsight. So again, it's a long answer, but I completely agree that there's a very narrow, conscious intent focused definition of racism is a huge error. There's a couple other. Sorry, by the way, as far as like this computer is just so odd here, but like I'm looking sometimes at my camera but I really want to look at Sherwood when he's talking. So if I'm looking down, that's what's going on. And then there's also a chat that's getting really brilliantly edited for us and presented to us, and so by Krista and Marie. And so I'm trying to look at a couple
The chat is being edited and presented. All right.
Yeah, take it away, Sherwood. What do you want to go to next here? Some really great questions.
I want to share some comments that got put up here that I think are worth people hearing if they haven't read them. One of the audience comments is, but you can see, acknowledge, honor, and love difference without calling it the term race, which has been used to describe physical difference rather than constructed categories. And the other, let's see if I can get to the other. The other comment you sort of hinted at
Wait. Breaking news. Has anyone seen the pictures of Madison Cawthorn in lingerie that just popped up on my Twitter? I know this has nothing to do with the presentation, but I am literally looking at pictures of Madison Cawthorn in lingerie right now. This is after Madison Cawthorn talked about there being orgies with lots of coke. Here, I'll show. Hang on. This is real. Look at this. Hang on. Oh my god. What is going on? What is going on? He's a congressman. He is a freshman congressman. He's a Republican. Oh my god. He's 26 years old, raised in a conservative Baptist community in North Carolina. Oh my god. So he got in trouble because he released this interview where he basically said that in DC, there's like lots of orgies with a lot of coke. And he got in trouble for it. And Kevin McCarthy gave him like a stern talking to and was like, you can't tell truth on the internet. And so then he retracted his statements about there being orgy coke-filled parties in Washington, D.C. And now he's wearing lingerie on the internet. You know what? Madison Cawthorn living his best. This was the interlude that we needed for happy hour today. Thank you, Madison Cawthorn, for giving us this gift. All right. Yeah, good for him. Fuck it. He's living his best life. Let's move back to the presentation. We have serious business to tend to, guys. We can't just fuck around all day with Madison Cawthorn being in lingerie on the internet.
There was a comment in question about the difference between focusing on, and you started to talk about this, on interpersonal racism sometimes rather than the structural or systemic forms of racism. But let me scroll down to the end here and see. All right. Could you please speak more about how the concept of white guilt and white savior? Could you please speak more to how the concept of white guilt and white savior?
Yay, Vanessa! Welcome to Locals, Vanessa!
May impact anti-racist identity development.
This one's better for you, I think, Sherwood, at least to start, because you've got sort of identity development and kind of you've got a pretty strong view of this, I think, or at least of a helpful kind of stages of development tool.
Okay, I'll give it a shot. So this is 3 different questions in one, so I'll try to work my way through them as best I can. There's a wonderful book called White Fragility that you might want to read in terms of the white guilt piece.
Do not read that book.
So I think that
it is not a wonderful book. That is a lie.
Because
it is a tool of the devil.
Has been created as a single story. Looking at whiteness from the outside, I have the impression that developmentally, whites are taught there's only one correct way to be white, and if you aren't following it, the further you diverge from it, the less benefits, quality, and respect as a white person you get.
Holy shit. No, that is not what we're taught at all. Did he literally just say whites have only been... What? Hang on. We need to listen to that again. Hang on. I might have to clip this.
Looking at whiteness from the outside, I have the impression that developmentally, whites are taught there's only one correct way to be white, and if you aren't following it, the further you diverge from it, the less benefits, quality, and respect as a white person you get.
No, so wrong.
Hence, we use derogatory terms for poor white people.
Wrong.
Hence, we sort of question if people are defined as white and yet don't practice Judeo-Christian religions, especially, Protestantism, they become questionably white in some ways.
No.
So I think part of
I'm still white.
The defense about that is a sense of insecurity, perhaps, or guilt that can be built around behaviors which are going to be stigmatizing by powerful peers. So I think that's a piece of this.
Does that mean that poor people don't have white privilege? Because I have been told repeatedly and explicitly that poor people do have white privilege, even if they're poor, even if they live in like Appalachia and don't even have like running water in their house. I have been assured on multiple occasions that poor white people still have white privilege. So is this guy saying that poor white people don't have white privilege? I have indeed been stigmatized by not following an Abrahamic religion, but I don't think that has to do with my skin color. I think that has to do with the fact that people are obsessed with Abrahamic religions.
I think white savior has to do with both colonialism and sort of issues of power and privilege. There's a conversation in sexism called mansplaining. I think there's
mansplaining is real. It happens in
unconsciously
threes. Every
that
time.
I
Happens
can
in
solve
threes.
this and I need to step in and fix this for those people.
It's true.
And
Mansplaining is
it's
real.
not a consciously malicious intent, but there's an ability because of white privilege to take control of situations, exclude the very people who can define the problem for themselves and may have the best solutions from the conversation because of the privilege you may have given your position as a white person. So that's at least sort of, I think, the savior complex. And it certainly happened in international settings where people from Europe or the US go into positions of power and dictate how things should be done without understanding fully the nuances and implications in the cultures and societies in which they're operating. So to the extent you're trying to be anti-racist and you're overly using your power and privilege to continually, innocently, perhaps if innocent can be the right word, at least unintentionally silence people of color, BIPOC folks, that is not going to work well. You know, I often say the only way you can define yourself as an ally is if the people you're claiming to be an ally with have used that label for yourself. I can't say I'm an ally to another group. The group has to say I'm an ally to that group. I can say I'm working my hardest to support them, to advocate and when I have opportunities. But the word ally implies that someone else sees me in that role, not that I see myself in that role. So that's where I would go with this, the white guilt, the white savior piece. The last thing I'd say, Alec, you mentioned this. This really shows up because there's a book by Thandika called Learning to Be White. If you go around labeling people as white
to be
in
white.
all white context, you get this really perplexed look from
Oh
people
God.
because whiteness, in order to be effective, has to be invisible. It has to be the default. Once you make it visible, it starts to undermine its, quote, I'll use my words, sacred position in society. I'm going to stop there and switch this back to you.
Boy, there's so much there. I'll just try to say a couple of things here about this. I'm really just absorbed in everything that you were just saying.
He has no idea what to say.
On the last point first.
No idea.
And this,
no idea.
Other reason I'm speaking slowly is that this is,
it is
I've lived this one
important.
and God knows how many blunders on this very ground myself. But what I try to think about is, and this again coming from your last point, if I think it would be valuable to signal that I don't see whiteness as transparent or the norm or the default, and that I'm aware that my whiteness is playing a role in how I see the material. Like if we're a classroom and we're talking about some directly racially related question, or we're having conversation about our dynamic in the room in a business meeting or again a class, and it's possible that my whiteness could mean my perceived whiteness. There, I think it can be valuable to refer to it. But, and this again to go back to the questioner, you know, belaboring my white guilt is very unlikely to be helpful for the group. And it can be valuable in certain settings for a white man to acknowledge guilt, responsibility, culpability, a group affiliation with the people that are doing harm in the document that we're reading. But it usually is not actually going to be helpful for the group after a sentence or two. So on the second term, I don't like complex. I don't like using that language, and I will tell you why, which is that it connotes a mental illness, and I think that's a real error. I don't like thinking of racism as a mental illness. I find it distancing. I find it kind of pathologizing in a weird kind of narrowing kind of way. I think it's a pathology, but I think it's a political pathology, an economic pathology.
Racism is a political pathology. Okay.
But you said it. The white savior complex is a very specific contemporary, relatively problem of thinking that that I have the answers and that the obligation is on me to go into these communities and solve their problems for them. It doesn't mean, though, that you shouldn't go. It's just a final note on this. You should probably still go. If you see a community in need, and it happens to have a racial element of its construction, and you're aware that it's racially constructed and defined and being damaged in part because of its racial identity, don't let your fear of having the wrong thought in your heart or your brain, don't let that stop you. If you want to go be in proximity, I mean, Brian Stevenson talks about proximity all the time. Be there, show up, make yourself humble if you can, ask if you're allowed to be an ally.
If you're allowed to be an ally, if you're allowed.
I have the answers and this community needs me to solve their problems for them. But it's still often the right move to go show up and help out.
I have to think hard and long about that. I want to read I'm going to respond to what you said, but I also want to add in, there was a good suggestion here. An example of racism not being supremacy might be, I want to say this, Adichie's, and this is The Danger of a Single Story.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we also confuse racism with ethnocentrism and a lot of other things too. The only challenge I have, I do think that
Patrice,
this
that's
is the problem
racist.
with us talking about this as academics.
Racist,
you know, I immediately think about books like The Nature of Prejudice by Allport. Putting people in a situation of interaction, if they hold a position of power, may not necessarily change their view very rapidly. If I'm powerful enough, I may not have to alter my view even in the complete presence of difference.
Patrice,
so I worry.
You're the best.
I worry about the bull in the china shop routine. You know, does the bull ever notice that things are breaking around them? So yes, I do think that it's probably most times better to try to help than not. But if you can't have the humility, I think things can go terribly, terribly wrong if there's no ability to be self-reflective and have some humility in the process. I'm going to stop there and then go to this other question. This is about the university. It says, I wonder if it would help us at the university if we collected predefined and externally defined racial and ethnic data to also ask folks how they self-define and perhaps also ask them how the two differ. So if I'm reading the question right, I think they're asking, would it benefit us to compare the categories which have been created with the categories that people are actually using themselves?
It's cool. That's yes, and great research project. A number of different disciplines would have slightly different sort of methodological ideas about who you'd want to talk to about that. I think the second part of the question is the real insight, is the real protein there. And you'd want to ask that first, I think, although it depends what the person is asking here, but like, I would want to ask that question first. You could ask that question in a pretty open-ended way. You know, what terms do you use to define yourself, or what parts of your identity are most important to you? And have it be a really long, like a big open space, you know, or ask like what 5 or what 7, if you want to encourage people to think broadly and to give original answers and not just like think, oh, I'm being asked what my race is, or oh, I'm being asked what my pronouns or my gender sort of terms are, or oh, I'm being asked what state I'm from. Yeah, and then asking about if people accept those individual terms. Yeah, it's interesting. Again, I'm always thinking of the census, and it's just so fascinating. But like, the census actually does some interesting suggestions here now, where they ask you to fill in sort of, you know, not only to mark 1 or more, but sort of asking you to fill in more about your specific terms that you would use to define yourself if you do check white, for example, on that box. But yeah, this is a classic example of something we were talking about earlier about seeing race too much or too little.
Yeah, he really is.
You mentioned
I can't deal with this guy.
Like taking that data.
This guy would not know even how to interact with me.
In order to measure,
I am so much more masculine than this guy.
Like if you want to know if the healthcare system,
truly,
or the educational system, or the criminal justice system is having racial discriminatory effects, you have to know what race your patient is. You just have to get that data, and that immediately raises all the questions we're asking before about, is that seeing race too much? Is that attaching labels to people that they don't use themselves, which is what this question is asking about. So it's just that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where it really gets tricky. To like tackle racism in a very practical way, you kind of need those terms, and you need to attach those identities to people just so that you can do the work in certain kinds of settings. But yeah, doing it in a way where you can also ask people what terms they prefer, I think is a good idea. Yeah, what else? We've got a bunch of other questions do we have here?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, this goes back to the internal definition versus external. There's a nice question here that sort of follows up on this. I've heard so many.
Sam says, this guy needs critical dominatrix theory. I agree. This guy does need critical dominatrix theory. You know what else I just learned? So do you guys remember? So this happened on yesterday's stream when Patrice and I were talking about the porn class, and I said there is a former Mormon gay porn producer, and I couldn't remember his name, but he has a whole fucking website that is porn based on things that actually happened in the Mormon temples from when he was Mormon. And so he made a whole fucking porn website about it. And I said I couldn't remember his name at the time. So, and I trusted the internet would provide, because I wanted to talk to this guy to try to have him on my channel. The internet has provided, and I now know his name. Someone left a comment saying his name. I knew someone would know. Like, half of my fans are gay men. I knew someone would know his name. So I now have his name, and I can reach out to him and be like, I have all these subs on YouTube, and they really want to hear from a gay, formerly Mormon porn producer about what happened in the temples. We want the tea. Patrice, you can come on the stream too if you want. You can talk to the gay, formerly Mormon porn producer too. It can be a group activity. Why not? He's a porn producer.
Terms around race, and I just have no idea what is correct.
His porn name is LeGrand Wolf. Or that's what it is, right? Hang on. LeGrand Wolf. I think that's what it is. What a great name. Yeah, LeGrand Wolf. I'm going to reach out to that guy. He's fucking hot, dude. He's a big guy. Maybe gay porn, but you know what? I don't judge. He's formerly Mormon. We can ask him about all the stuff. Whatever.
And when it is correct to use which term. When do I say Black versus African American? When do I say white versus Caucasian? When do I say people of color? Should I always default to people of color? The other thing I want to just quickly mention is that we are posting in the chat links to some of those resources that have been mentioned, whether it's white fragility or danger of a single story. So you can check the chat if you want to follow up on those.
Yeah, Patrice would be a fluffer. Patrice is a fluffer in this particular case. Fun fact, and I don't know why I know this, but I do know this. 35% of all gay porn is consumed by women. Women like gay porn. Like, a lot. And my theory behind this is the reason is like straight porn is the women in straight porn are dirty and skanky for the most part. Not all of them, but a lot of them. But gay porn is so much more authentic in what it is. I don't know. That's my theory behind why 35% of all gay porn is consumed by women. I could be wrong. Offer your theories in the chat, but that's a real statistic. Phil McCracken, critical dominatrix theory, is that like getting pegged? Yes, it can be, Phil. Phil, you would love this. I'm surprised you haven't seen this video. Phil, I did a whole fucking video about critical dominatrix theory in relation to Jack Murphy specifically. I am shocked you didn't see this video. It's on my other channel. Yes, that is precisely and exactly what critical dominatrix theory is. Yes. Well, not always, but it can be, I guess.
Boy, again, these are just such hard questions. But I have to say, go watch The Danger of a Single Story. If you Google it, you'll get right to it. It's a DGA from before she was super famous, or at least before, I think before Americana came out, at least. It's a TED Talk, but it doesn't have the like perfectly, annoyingly perfect production values that most TED Talks have. It's just her. It's an amazing essay, and it's so good. There's like 9 forms of genius in it. And it does, I mean, just to come back to that question that the person is posing, it's, one way to understand that essay is that ignorance can effectively damage like racism. Whether ignorance is racism, I worry a little bit about overusing the term, and it loses its meaning.
This guy is such like a fucking like.
But I think that's what the questioner is getting at, like not knowing anything about a racial group or a place, or that she has a great personal story there about not knowing anything about an individual in her life that was very damaging, and she sort of called herself.
This is how we make this bearable. We talk about gay porn.
In response to this latest question, if it works in the setting, acknowledge it.
Just T, I did get your email and the answer is yes. I just haven't gotten to it yet, but the answer is yes. I definitely would be totally open to having that chat with you. I think that would be great. I really liked the way, I mean, I like the email. I just, I suck at email, Jess. I do. But I did get it and I agree to it in theory. We just need to schedule it, but I thought it was a great idea and I appreciate you sending me the note.
I'm a huge fan of prefaces. I'm a huge believer in prefaces. If they get too long and self-absorbed, then no.
Yeah, this guy is soy. That's what his problem is. He's soy.
I'm just aware that I'm really not sure about which sort of language. I think language matters, and I want to use this term, but I'm really not sure if people have different ideas about what terms are best or appropriate here, or that they prefer to use themselves. I'd love to know about it. Maybe even a shorter version than that. But if you're feeling a real uncertainty about what terms to use in a particular setting, I don't think it hurts, and I think it can really help to just literally say that. Especially because, and I say this as somebody who absolutely believes that language matters, and I can show you the evidence that language matters. But let's be honest, essentially this summer, the preferred term changed from African American in most settings. The style book of the New York Times and other major publications
that definitely
changed
New York
not only
Times
to black,
which
but
we
to
should
black
be using to judge
with extraordinary speed. I mean, I can show you the articles about the early 1990s. Jesse Jackson gave a press conference in which the Rainbow Push Coalition and others said, we would like people to use the term African American. We think it can do some really valuable political work in this setting.
Hang on. What else did the Rainbow Coalition do? What else did the Rainbow Coalition do, motherfucker, that you're not going to talk about? The Rainbow Coalition teamed up with the KKK. I'm not making this up. Google it. The Rainbow Coalition were Black Panthers who teamed up with the KKK because they realized that they were a populist movement and they actually had more in common than they disagreed on. And so they teamed up from a political perspective, and that led to the leader. Oh God, what is his name? I forget his name. It was in Chicago. That led to the leader of the Black Panthers getting assassinated because they teamed up with the KKK. I remember talking about this after Biden got inaugurated. I was like, why doesn't populist Black Lives Matter team up with populist MAGA? They have more in common than they don't. And that was already done in the fucking 70s in Chicago. It's all true. Go Google it. Rainbow Coalition. He won't say that though. He's just going to talk about, they really wanted to be called African Americans. Well, they were also really strategic.
And then this summer, we had a really significant shift in the sort of center of gravity in terms of where people preferred, what language people thought was the best kind of term there. So again, you're sick of hearing us say it. These things are contextual. That doesn't mean they're not real. Saying it's contextual does not mean it's not deeply, substantively hard and important. It just means that it depending on the context, a different word can be. I think that those broader terms, people of color, right, BIPOC communities, those are terms for groups. And in certain settings, when you're speaking with an individual, they're wildly inappropriate, or at least they risk doing that. And that's why it's such a good question.
Wait, the term really people of color is wildly inappropriate?
So I don't know if
I agree.
That's useful, but that's how I would think about that one.
I would just focus on something you said that I think is really important. You start out with if you feel, and I don't think we say that often enough. I think many times in these difficult situations, get out of our head and get into our gut. And you can sense pretty quickly if you use the term and someone's not comfortable with it, and say, I'm sorry, as you said, if I didn't, do it before as a preamble, I'm sorry. Did I say something inappropriate? And is there a language you'd rather me use? Or honestly say, I'm not sure which term you prefer. Could you help me here? I just want to, unintentionally offend you. But I think often when things go south at the gut level, we know it. We just sometimes choose to, or are so uncomfortable, we don't actually engage the fact that we know that something's not sitting right. And I really like your piece. There's a big difference between talking to individuals and speaking about groups.
Yeah.
And I also think there's a big difference when, you're representing an audience versus speaking for yourself. We maybe have time. We've got about 5 minutes left. 4 minutes left. I do also want to say, I think that, oh, wait a minute. We got a last question. Good. We can do this quickly, I hope. My problem with white fragility's framing is that it draws a hard line between whiteness and non-whiteness. I'm Jewish and have both personal and ancestral experiences with being excluded by whites, Christians, and because of my Jewishness. At a young age, I understood prejudice and racism. I have also choked on identifying as white because it was a club and I was excluded from it, as were my ancestors. I have white skin privilege and do not equate my experience with those of the BIPOC community. But I use my experience to be a strong anti-racist. What I'm saying is that whiteness is not a monolith, more like a club that gets to set the rules for membership. I don't have anything. I mean, I think that's all well said. I'm not sure I disagree. I like the club metaphor is a good one.
Yeah, well, it's also a club that beats people. So it's both kinds of club, whiteness. But this is a really excellent point, I think, about what whiteness contains. This is also, I think it recalls our earlier conversation about, this is a person who, and there's this really good language of like, I have white skin privilege. That's very precise, careful language. It's very different from I am white, or even I identify as white. Oh, this person might say,
he just said whiteness beats people with a club.
I identify as white, but and this also recalls the previous question about asking people how they identify and how they understand themselves. What parts of your identity are most important? Because this person would say, I'm going to check white if that's what you give me, but my Jewishness is actually a more important, salient part of my identity, and it actually can sort of help me identify with, oh, careful, wrong use of identify. This person was very careful of like, I have privilege and don't equate my experience, but it doesn't make me more sensitive to prejudice, for example. No, this is a specific, again, we talked last time about, and I think the book is literally called, is it called How Jews Became White Folks? There's kind of a How Italians and how the Irish is the kind of the original.
Those are books.
But this, I know we're just about out of time, but I have had really valuable conversations with students in the last couple of years about this particular question, because in a really intense, complicated way, campus politics are at the center of this part of the racial struggle over that merges foreign policy debates and religion and race. And it's
this
really
guy
sort of
has said basically nothing this entire time. He said nothing.
Again, I'm putting air quotes around things because it's one of these debates that's hard to even describe a position without biasing the question. But whether Jewishness or discrimination against Israel is racial discrimination. That's the way the question is sort of posed. If a campus group wants to criticize Israeli foreign policy, is that criticizing Jews? Is that racial discrimination? Or a group wants to exclude somebody from a meeting and labels them a Zionist. is that racial discrimination? So again, bad facts make bad law, and some of these disputes are literally over like who gets to be in some campus meeting, and it's a proxy for this other stuff. But that's a really great question about whiteness and political conflict. So thank you so much.
We're out of time.
Oh, thank God.
There's a
Because
good
I
last
can't take any more
comment
of
that
like
Krista's gonna
not
publish for
saying
us
anything and
around
pretending
Jewishness.
it's real.
I do think that this leads well into our next session, which will be with Dr. Nikki Khanna when we look at multiracial identities.
Oh God, no, we're not going to watch that.
And that will be being posted
Yes,
soon, and then the conversation
this is a
will be
soy
November
stream, not a spy stream, soy stream.
13th. There is an evaluation posted for those of you that have partaken, and we really would appreciate getting your feedback. I want to put in that caveat again that this could have been 3 hours online and all of our eyes would have been red and sore.
Thank God it wasn't.
Thank you, Alec, for your time. Paul, Krista, Masha, Masha, Marie, everyone behind the scenes, thank you so much. And we hope this just inspires you in the same way that the Amazing Grace, Beyond, Safe Space series that have been offered to engage these conversations and engage our own learning.
What?
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you to you, Alec. And
thank you. Thanks very much, everybody. These are great questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, I guess that's all we have for this particular stream. Now, I know I promised we were going to do the equity thing with Biden as well, but I have just been informed that I need to put on a pair of pants. I'm wearing sweatpants right now. Don't anyone get any ideas. I'm actually wearing pants, but I need to put on a real pair of pants and drive down the road to go to the beer bar because it is the birthday of Eric Sawyer of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. Shout out to Eric, one of the best guys that I know. He's incredible. He's one of the people that runs the LPNH Twitter account. He does a great job, and it's his birthday. So happy birthday, Eric. And we're going to go drink beer. So we're going to have to save the second half of Biden's Equity Summit for another day. So I have priorities, yo. I'm a professional. I have priorities. But we are going to be back tomorrow for Sassy Saturday. And tomorrow, and this is going to be on my main channel, not actively Unwoke. It's going to be on my main channel. If you were watching on Odyssey, Rockfin, Rumble, or Gitter, it's going to be exactly where you are. You don't need to change anything. But on my main YouTube channel, we're going to be having Sassy Saturday tomorrow night, starting at around about 6 p.m.-ish. And we're going to watch the interview that Benjamin Boyce did with Jack Murphy. So no drama in relation to me this week, which I think is actually a nice little break, but we're going to still have drama. We're going to have internet drama and feuding and chicanery, and we're going to be sassy and we're going to be gossipy, and we're going to be like all the things that we shouldn't be because it's kind of like a guilty pleasure, and we're not supposed to admit that we like it, but we really do like it. I know you all love it. We're going to be doing that around 6 p.m. tomorrow night. And I will update you guys on that if there are any changes. But if you enjoyed the stream today, I hope you will consider mounting that like button. I hope you will consider subscribing on whatever platform you're watching on, whether that be YouTube or Odyssey or Rockfin or Rumble or Gitter. Shout out to Kat on Rumble. Thank you for joining in. Yeah. I haven't watched this yet, so this will be my reaction stream to this. I haven't watched it yet, so if you've already watched it, don't ruin it for everyone else, okay? But if you enjoy the work I'm doing and you would like to see it continue, or if you just want to, talk to me in a private setting where I'm not being recorded on the internet, where I say much more scandalous things than when I'm being recorded on the internet, you can join me in my locals community. Emphasize, you've got to tell me what your handle is. I feel like I've blocked you before and then you've asked me to unblock you and now I've blocked you again. So you said something dickish on Twitter, man. You got to email me and tell me what your handle is. But you can join all of us in my locals community, kb.locals.com/support. You can join as a supporter for $5 a month or $50 a year, or you can make a one-time gift, and all of those things are going to get you access to a variety of perks in my locals community, and it also helps to support the work I do, because I literally cannot do this without my locals members. You guys are so valuable. You keep me doing this. You prevent me from needing to get a real job, because I know this is shocking. YouTube doesn't actually pay the bills. If I was just relying on YouTube, I would have to do a lot more corporate training than I'm doing right now. And, if my locals numbers start to die down, I'm going to need to go back to corporate training. And corporate training is good. It's lucrative as fuck. I don't mind doing it. I'm really fucking good at it. But it does take time. And time is the most valuable commodity there is. So if you want me focused on doing this stuff with you guys, or researching, or writing things, or going after school districts, or working with parents groups, or things like that, I don't charge money for that shit. You have to support the work because you value it. So my community on locals is the best. I love them to death. Thank you guys for all your support. And I will see you all tomorrow for a Sassy Saturday. Take care. Have a great rest of your night. We'll see you soon. Emphasize, email me. I'm not going to remember it. I'm drunk. drkarlyn.com/contact. Email me. I want to unblock you, emphasize. I do. See you guys soon.